Chapter 1. Flourishing Martial Nation, Wei River. 3 figures stood facing each other. 2 of the figures were 7 feet tall, with bulging muscles all over their bodies. Each and every one of their movements was filled with power. With a single glance, one could tell that these 2 were martial artists. In front of these 2 figures, there was an extremely thin and weak man. Compared to these 2 strong men, he seemed even more frail. "Little bastard, hand over this month's salary obediently." One of the burly men looked at the skinny man opposite him with a disdainful smile. "You're just a piece of trash without a spiritual pulse. It's a waste to take this salary. Hand it over quickly." "Impossible." Although the man was thin and weak, his expression was extremely determined. He held a jade bottle tightly in his hand. Inside the jade bottle, there were 3 milky white elixir pills shining brightly. The moment they saw the 3 milky white elixirs, the 2 burly men's eyes were filled with greed. Both of them took a few steps forward. Now, they were only a step away from the skinny man. The skinny man reprimanded angrily. "Lin Mo, Lin Yi, the 2 of you are just Lin Mansion's outer mansion servants. Offending your superiors is a crime punishable by death." Hearing the reprimand, Lin Mo and Lin Yi were stunned for a moment. Then they burst into laughter. "Chu Fengyan, do you really think you're Lin Mansion's outer mansion chief steward? You're just a piece of trash who can't cultivate. The Lin family only gave you the position of outer mansion chief steward because of your late grandfather's kindness. Hand over your monthly salary obediently, and we'll listen to you. But if you don't hand it over, don't blame us for taking it by force." Lin Mo laughed. There was no one around the Wei River. Even if the 2 of them were to do something, no one would be able to see. Moreover, even if they were seen, who would dare to make a move and offend the Lin Mansion? "Little bastard, hand over the 3 bone-tempering pills quickly." Lin Yi took a step forward and sneered. "Otherwise, you won't be able to avoid physical pain later." "Impossible." Chu Fengyan's eyes were filled with despair, but he didn't loosen his grip on the jade bottle. These bone-tempering pills were his last hope for cultivation. How could he give these 3 bone-tempering pills to these 2? "Little bastard, looks like you really don't know what's good for you." Upon hearing Chu Fengyan's reply, Lin Mo's and Lin Ye's faces darkened. Traces of viciousness could be seen at the corners of their mouths. "Since that's the case, don't blame us for being impolite." Lin Mo's face revealed a somewhat sinister smile. His feet moved, and his hand reached out to grab the jade bottle in Chu Fengyan's hand. "Hand it over." Seeing Lin Mo attack, Chu Fengyan's expression changed. He clenched his right hand into a fist and punched at Lin Mo high wind fist. On the tip of Chu Fengyan's fist, a touch of light green emerged. This was the manifestation of spiritual power. In the victorious Wu country, everyone who practiced martial arts cultivated spiritual power. It was rumored that those who cultivated spiritual power to a great extent could soar between heaven and earth, move mountains, and fill seas. However, on the fist wind of Chu Fengyan's fist, the light green color was extremely thin. This was the manifestation of insufficient spiritual power. Seeing Chu Fengyan's fist, Lin Mo's face was filled with a mocking smile. "Sure enough, you're trash. You can't even use the lowest martial skill, high wind fist. I'll let you see what a real martial skill is." Lin Mo's eyes flickered, and his body instantly became light and graceful. He suddenly kicked at Chu Fengyan's chest. Breeze kick. Although Lin Mo wasn't proficient in using the intermediate martial skill of the Lin Mansion's outer court, it was a disaster for Chu Fengyan. Bam! Chu Fengyan's body was suddenly kicked out, and he fell to the ground. The jade bottle in his hand also fell to the ground. If you knew this would happen, you wouldn't have resisted and suffered physical pain in vain. Lin Yi bent down, picked up the jade bottle, and said with a smile, "Butler Chu, when you go back, remember to give the next month's salary directly to the 2 of us so that we won't suffer physical pain in the future." After speaking, Lin Mo and Lin Yi turned around, intending to leave. They didn't even look at Chu Fengyan, who was lying on the ground. "Give me back the bone-tempering pill." Chu Fengyan climbed up from the ground, and directly chased after Lin Mo and Lin Yi. He clenched his hand into a fist and fiercely punched at Lin Yi. This sudden punch caught Lin Mo and Lin Yi off guard. When Lin Yi was about to turn around, the punch had already landed on his face. Suddenly, a few front teeth fell out of Lin Yi's mouth. "Little bastard, you're courting death." Lin Yi spat out a mouthful of blood and threw a punch at Chu Fengyan. This punch was filled with anger. The power of this punch immediately sent Chu Fengyan flying to the ground, and he could no longer move. "Lin Yi, this kid hasn't even reached the bone-tempering stage. I'm afraid this punch will take away half of his life." Lin Mo frowned as he looked at Chu Fengyan, who was lying on the ground. "Young Master Lin only asked the two of us to teach this person a lesson. If he really dies, it will be troublesome." Although Chu Fengyan's status in the Lin family's outer mansion was extremely low, he was still the outer mansion's butler in name. If Chu Fengyan really died, it would be a big deal in the Lin family. It can't be. This kid usually gets beaten up a lot. His life is very tough. Hearing Lin Mo's words, Lin Yi's heart was a little unsure. He walked over, looked at the motionless Chu Fengyan, and kicked him. "Get up." But after this kick, Chu Fengyan was still lying on the ground, motionless. It seemed that Chu Fengyan's face was starting to turn pale. "He's not breathing." Lin Yi bent down and touched Chu Fengyan's body. "There is no sign of life. What should we do?" Lin Yi said nervously. Given Chu Fengyan's status, if others knew that they were the ones who killed Chu Fengyan, Lin Mo and Lin Yi would not be able to escape death. "Let's bury him. There's no one in a 1-mile radius on the banks of the Wei River. While no one is looking, let's bury him and say that the kid went missing. There are many people who want this little bastard dead. As long as we don't get discovered, no one will investigate." Lin Mo said. "All right, let's do that." Lin Yi nodded. The two of them had just reached Chu Fengyan's side and were about to lift his body when a white light suddenly descended from the sky. This white light was the shape of a human. When Lin Mo and Lin Yi saw this flash of white light, they both shouted loudly. They hurriedly abandoned Chu Fengyan's body and ran towards it. "That can't be the kid's ghost, right? Run. He's here to take our lives." Their expressions changed drastically, and they hurriedly ran away. Chapter 2. After a long while, Chu Fengyan gradually regained consciousness. "What's going on? Am I not dead?" Chu Fengyan suddenly opened his eyes and sat up. However, the pain on his body still made him frown. "Where is this? Didn't I jump off the heaven-ceasing peak? How can I still be alive?" Chu Fengyan's eyes were extremely blank. He looked at everything around him, and his mind was extremely unfamiliar. Chu Fengyan? Wei River Riverside? Lin Mansion? Suddenly, Chu Fengyan was stunned. Then, his eyes began to change as he looked at his surroundings. "So I, Chu Jianbai, have already been dead for 10,000 years. Chu Fengyan raised his head and looked at his surroundings. His eyes were filled with depression. Chu Jianbai. If this name was placed 10,000 years ago, it would be a name that no one in the entire victorious martial country didn't know. The Sword Dao was the largest martial Dao in the victorious martial country, or even the entire continent. If there was someone who was the number one in the Sword Dao, even a child would say that it was the Lord of the Sword Dao, the number one in the Sword Dao in the ultimate realm. However, if there was someone who was the number one in the Sword Dao, it was another name 10,000 years ago. Chu Jianbai. The former Chu Jianbai was the number one in the Sword Dao 10,000 years ago. He was the youngest disciple of the Lord of the Sword Dao. At that time, even the Lord of the Sword Dao had one side to Chu Jianbai. In terms of Sword Dao and comprehension of the Sword Dao, Chu Jianbai had already surpassed his master, the Lord of the Sword Dao. However, this sentence was not full of praise, but more of a sigh. Although Chu Jianbai had a peerless Sword Dao, he had a fatal flaw. That was, Chu Jianbai couldn't cultivate spiritual power in his entire life. Spiritual power was the energy accumulated from the spiritual meridian in a person's body. Without the spiritual meridian, one couldn't cultivate spiritual power, let alone accumulate it. He had sword intent, but he didn't have any spiritual energy. He was no different from a cripple. Later, The Lord of the Sword Tao was besieged by the experts of the 7 major sects and fell. In order to obtain the countless sword techniques that the Lord of the Sword Tao possessed, the experts of the 7 major sects began to hunt down the disciples of the Lord of the Sword Tao. Countless of Chu Jianbai's senior brothers and sisters had fallen at the hands of the experts from the 7 great sections. In the end, Chu Jianbai was also discovered by the experts of the 7 great sects on the heaven-ceasing peak. In order to prevent the experts of the 7 great sects from obtaining the sword art, Chu Jianbai was willing to self-destruct and leap down the heaven-ceasing peak. Tianjin Sect, Desolate Ancient Sect, Sage Monarch Sect, Dubby Hall, 9 Demons City, Guyu Canyon, Medicine King's Valley, the 7 great sects. I, Chu Jianbai, will definitely kill them one by one. I want to avenge my dead master, senior brothers and sisters. Chu Fengyan, also known as Chu Jianbai, let out a furious roar. Since the heavens had once again given Chu Jianbai his life, he was going to take revenge on the 7 great sections. He was going to avenge the blood feud from before. However, it was already 10,000 years later. Chu Jianbai's name had already disappeared. His current body was called Chu Fengyan. Huff, this Chu Fengyan is truly pitiful. He was actually beaten to death by 2 subordinates. After awakening, the memories of this body poured into Chu Jianbai's mind. Naturally, he was already clear of everything that had just happened. From today onwards, Chu Jianbai is dead. There's only Chu Fengyan left. Chu Fengyan's eyes revealed a bit of unswerving determination. Chu Jianbai had already died under the heaven-ceasing peak 10,000 years ago. And now, there was only Chu Fengyan, who wanted to take revenge on the 7 great sections. This body, Chu Fengyan's eyes quickly became serious. He was inspecting this body. Suddenly, a strange feeling came from his left hand, causing Chu Fengyan's expression to become overjoyed. This is spiritual energy. On Chu Fengyan's left hand, there was an inconspicuous azure speck. The spiritual energy within this azure speck was extremely thin. However, to Chu Fengyan, this was the first time he felt spiritual energy. In the past, Chu Jianbai's body was the 9 extinction physique. Not a single spiritual vein could be found in his entire body. Even Chu Jianbai's master, the master of Sword Tao, found countless spiritual herbs, but they were all useless to Chu Jianbai. And now, although the spiritual energy within this body was extremely thin, it was already hope for Chu Fengyan. As long as it wasn't the 9 extinction physique, he was confident that he could transform this body into the most perfect body in the world. Chu Fengyan sat down cross-legged and slowly circulated the thin spiritual energy within his body. Slowly, a golden ancient book appeared in Chu Fengyan's mind. On the cover of this golden ancient book, 5 golden words appeared. Broken Bone Rebirth Art. 10,000 years ago, it was the #1 cultivation technique in the flourishing martial country. To all martial artists, spiritual veins were the most important. A person's spiritual vein represented his talent and future achievements. Spiritual veins were destined by birth. For example, Chu Fengyan was a martial artist who only had 1.5 spiritual veins. He didn't even have a single spiritual vein in his body. Therefore, when he cultivated, his speed was 10 times slower than ordinary martial artists. Being born with a spiritual vein was enough for one to cultivate martial Tao. However, one's achievements were limited. In the Lin Mansion, the true internal disciples had at least 3 spiritual veins. Among them, there were a few outstanding ones who were born with 5 spiritual veins. For example, the young Mansion Master was born with 7 spiritual veins opened. He was the first person in the Lin Mansion in 100 years and was a well-known genius in the entire flourishing martial country. Although spiritual veins were born naturally, there were other ways to open them. Some heavenly treasures and the assistance of experts could help open spiritual veins. The Broken Bone Rebirth Art was known as the #1 cultivation technique because it had the effect of opening spiritual veins. In the past, Chu Fengyan also wanted to open spiritual veins. Therefore, he painstakingly searched for the Broken Bone Rebirth Art. However, even with the broken bone rebirth art, he couldn't open the 9 extinction physique. However, this time, Chu Fengmian's body wasn't the 9 extinction physique. Even if the spiritual veins in his body were blocked, Chu Fengmian was confident that he could open them. Condense. Chu Fengmian sat on the ground and closed his eyes. He started to circulate the broken bone rebirth art. After a while, bean-sized beads of sweat rolled down Chu Fengmian's forehead. The broken bone rebirth art wasn't a perfect cultivation technique. If one wanted to cultivate it, they would have to endure extreme pain. This was especially true for the broken bone rebirth art. First, they had to break the spiritual veins in their body and condense them again. The pain of breaking the spiritual veins was even more painful than the pain of breaking bones. Chapter 3. Beside the Wei River, there was a figure sitting cross-legged on the ground, motionless. Chu Fengmian had been cultivating the broken bone rebirth art for 2 hours. In these 2 hours, the spiritual veins in Chu Fengmian's body had been shattered and reformed countless times. Shattering and reforming time after time, the pain was enough to make an ordinary person faint. Chu Fengmian's clothes were drenched in sweat. However, Chu Fengmian did not stop the process. He could feel that every time the spiritual veins were shattered and reformed, they would become thicker. The strength in his body was also increasing. "Break from me!" Chu Fengmian let out a furious roar. A cyclone began to flow within Chu Fengmian's body. Under the circulation of the cyclone, the blocked spiritual veins in his body were instantly opened up. Countless spiritual energy began to flow within them. In an instant, a surge of spiritual energy began to wander within Chu Fengmian's body. His entire body was filled with inexhaustible energy. The appearance of this surge of spiritual energy caused Chu Fengmian's strength to be several times stronger than before. "I finally opened up a spiritual vein. I finally have the capital to cultivate the martial Tao." Chu Fengmian stood up with a joyful expression on his face. However, a spiritual vein was only the beginning. A spiritual master with a spiritual vein would have a low attainment in his lifetime. Cultivating to the 5th and 6th level of the bone-tempering realm was already the limit. It was impossible for a spiritual master to reach the body refinement realm or the divine sea realm. If one wanted to cultivate to the true peak of the martial Tao, one's aptitude was indispensable. But now that Chu Fengmian had the broken bone rebirth art, he no longer had to worry about his aptitude. A day has already passed. It's time to return. Chu Fengmian stood up and patted the dust off his body. Chu Fengmian had to return to the Lin Mansion. Now that Chu Jianbai had obtained this body, he had a reason to complete everything that Chu Fengmian wanted, and that was to become the Lin Mansion's master. Martial Forest City. There is a city built by the Wei River, and the name of Martial Linlin City was based on the Lin Mansion. Naturally, one could tell that the Lin Mansion held an important position in Martial Linlin City. After unblocking a spiritual vein, Chu Fengmian could feel that his body had become much lighter. Previously, it took Chu Fengmian 4 hours to reach the Wei River, but this time, it only took him half an hour to return to Martial Linlin City. His speed increased by several times. This head steward Chu actually went out. Hasn't he always been hiding in the Lin Mansion? Why did you come out today? In Martial Forest City, many martial artists recognized Chu Fengmian at a glance. They discussed in amazement. They looked at Chu Fengmian with disdain and ridicule. Chu Fengmian's existence was definitely a joke in Martial Lin City. The chief steward of the Lin Mansion's outer mansion was actually a half-spiritual vein trash. This made many martial artists in Martial Forest City take pleasure in bullying Chu Fengmian. After all, the Lin Mansion was a high and mighty existence to them. Many of them had received a lot of resentment from the Lin Mansion. Now that they could vent their frustrations by bullying the chief steward of the Lin Mansion, they were naturally happy. Although Chu Fengmian was the chief steward of the Lin Mansion's outer mansion in name, none of the outer mansion disciples had ever helped Chu Fengmian. Instead, they all treated Chu Fengmian as a joke. In the past, Chu Fengmian did not dare to leave the Jiang Mansion because of this. Just when Chu Fengmian was about to reach the entrance of the Lin Mansion, a figure walked out from the crowd and blocked Chu Fengmian's path. Look at Xiao Dahai. This fellow was taught a lesson by the Lin Mansion's outer mansion disciples a few days ago. Looks like Chief Steward Chu is going to suffer today. When the words Head Steward Chu were mentioned, almost everyone's voice carried a bit of ridicule. Move aside. Chu Fengmian raised his head and calmly said when he saw the burly man blocking his path. If it was the previous Chu Fengmian, he wouldn't even dare to open his mouth. He would only take a detour after being bullied. However, the current Chu Fengmian was no longer the Chu Fengmian of the past. Within his body was the soul of Chu Jianbai, who was once the #1 swordwill expert. This time, he would definitely not give in. Oh! Chu Fengmian's reply was clearly unexpected to Xiao Dahai. When had Chu Fengmian ever dared to reply in such an unyielding manner? After sizing up Chu Fengmian, Xiao Dahai's lips curled into a cold smirk. If you want me to move aside, you have to obediently kneel on the ground and kowtow a few times. As long as I'm satisfied, I'll move aside. As Xiao Dahai spoke, his eyes couldn't help but reveal a hint of complacency. In front of the Lin Mansion, Xiao Dahai was like a dog that was bullied by the Lin Mansion. However, he could now bully the chief steward of the Lin Mansion's outer mansion. It was no wonder that those people liked to bully him. Chief Steward Chu, you better kneel down. Otherwise, you won't even be able to return to the Lin Mansion. Ha ha! Within the crowd, a mocking laughter rang out, followed by countless other laughter. Watching Chief Steward Chu being bullied every day was also the entertainment of the Martial Forest City's cultivators. Scram! Chu Fengmian's eyes revealed a hint of anger. His body moved as he walked forward. What? You want to fight? Seeing Chu Fengmian's actions, Xiao Dahai laughed. All right, since you're not willing to kneel, I'll beat you until you kneel. As he spoke, Xiao Dahai threw a punch at Chu Fengmian's chest. Xiao Dahai was also a level 2 bone-tempering realm cultivator. It was more than enough to deal with a half-spiritual pulse trash. Because of this, he dared to bully Chu Fengmian. Xiao Dahai's punch contained some spiritual energy. Although he didn't use his full strength, this punch was enough to make Chu Fengmian bedridden for half a month. It was extremely vicious. You're looking for a beating. Chu Fengmian coldly spat out a few words from the corner of his mouth. Facing this punch, Chu Fengmian's body suddenly dodged. His speed was so fast that Xiao Dahai couldn't react in time. Following that, Chu Fengmian's palm was already slapped towards Xiao Dahai's face. Slap! A crisp sound rang out, causing the cultivators present to be stunned. The scene of Chu Fengmian being easily defeated by Xiao Dahai did not happen. Instead, Chu Fengmian slapped Xiao Dahai's face. This slap did not contain much spiritual energy, but it was enough to make Xiao Dahai's face swell for a few days. You dare to retaliate? Xiao Dahai was ashamed and angry. Chu Fengmian was a well-known trash in Martial Forest City. As a level 2 bone-tempering realm cultivator, he was slapped in the face by Chu Fengmian. If this spread out, Xiao Dahai wouldn't be able to survive in Martial Forest City. Crushing Fist. Xiao Dahai's fist condensed spiritual energy and fiercely smashed towards Chu Fengmian. A martial technique was a power that only cultivators with spiritual energy could use. The power of a martial technique was stronger than 10 punches of an ordinary cultivator. Xiao Dahai had already lost his mind due to anger. Today, he wanted to make Chu Fengmian pay the price. However, this time, Chu Fengmian was already prepared. Chu Fengmian's figure moved and once again dodged Xiao Dahai's punch. Then, Chu Fengmian moved his feet and aimed a kick at Xiao Dahai's knee. Suddenly, a crisp sound rang out. Xiao Dahai's knee was shattered and he fell to the ground. Could it be that Chu Fengmian's spiritual vein has been opened? This scene was something that no cultivator present had expected. Chu Fengmian, who had always been called trash, had actually defeated Xiao Dahai today. Even some of the Lin clan's disciples rubbed their eyes when they saw this scene. When did Chu Fengmian possess such strength? Chapter 4. So painful. It seems like using the phantom body technique is still too much for my body. Chu Fengmian was lying on the bed in his room. He felt a numbing pain in his legs as he massaged them. Chu Fengmian had just opened his first spiritual meridian and stepped into the first level of the bone-tempering realm. In terms of strength, Chao Dahai was still stronger than Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian was able to defeat Chao Dahai because of this strength. Body technique. This body technique was extremely rare in the victorious Wushuang country. In a vast Lin mansion, there was only one light body technique, a yellow class lower body technique. This light body technique was regarded as the most important technique in the Lin mansion. Only talented disciples were allowed to cultivate it. As for Chu Fengmian, he could not cultivate it in his previous life. However, he had read countless books about the master of sword Dao. The body technique he just used was one that Chu Fengmian had learned before. It was a heaven-class lower body technique called the phantom body technique. Whether it was martial skills, elixirs, body techniques, or techniques, they were all divided into 4 grades in the victorious Wushuang country: heaven, earth, black, and yellow. They were further divided into 4 grades: extreme grade, high grade, middle grade, and low grade. Generally speaking, even a yellow class lower grade martial skill was something that ordinary warriors yearned for. In the entire Lin mansion, there was only one black class middle grade martial skill. It was known as the treasure of the Lin mansion. In his previous life, Chu Fengmian had seen countless martial skills, body techniques, and techniques. His memory was amazing, and he could remember everything he saw. However, Chu Fengmian did not have any spiritual energy at that time. He was just looking at it out of boredom. Now that he was reborn, Chu Fengmian finally had the chance to use it. Although I managed to defeat Chao Dahai with the phantom shadow movement technique, I've also lost 800 men. Chu Fengmian lowered his head. There were obvious bruises on Chu Fengmian's legs. These bruises were left behind when Chu Fengmian used the phantom body technique. Whether it was martial skills, body techniques, or techniques, they all required a strong body. If the body did not have the strength to use them, the body would be damaged. Although the phantom body technique didn't rely too much on the body's strength, Chu Fengmian's current body was too thin and weak. He still had to pay a certain price to forcefully activate it. As long as I step into the 3rd level of the bone tempering stage, I won't suffer any injuries when I use the phantom body technique again. At that time, I'll even be able to defeat a martial artist at the 5th level of the bone tempering stage. Chu Fengmian muttered to himself as he searched the room. Not long after, Chu Fengmian found several jade bottles in a cabinet in the room. Every jade bottle was filled to the brim with spiritual pills. Each of the spiritual pills was the size of a longan fruit. They were light blue in color, and a fragrant spiritual energy wafted out. A total of 35 bone-tempering pills. The bone-tempering elixir was the lowest grade elixir in the Lin Mansion's outer mansion. It was an elixir that was consumed by bone-tempering realm martial artists. It was effective for martial artists below level 5 bone-tempering realm. It had taken Chu Fengmian more than a year to accumulate these 35 bone-tempering pills. Although Chu Fengmian was known as the outer mansion's chief steward, in reality, his salary will be deducted by the people in the outer mansion. In the end, less than 1/10 of his salary would fall into Chu Fengmian's hands. These 35 bone-tempering pills were already the limit of Chu Fengmian's savings. He planned to refine these bone-tempering pills after he stepped into the bone-tempering stage. However, he didn't expect that Chu Fengmian would be beaten to death before he even stepped into the bone-tempering stage. Now that Chu Fengmian was reborn, these bone-tempering pills could finally be put to good use. Refined. Chu Fengmian sat cross-legged on the bed with his eyes closed. He took out one of the bone-tempering pills and popped it into his mouth. The bone-tempering pill melted as soon as it entered his mouth. It turned into a pure spiritual energy and dispersed into Chu Fengmian's body. In his previous life, Chu Fengmian didn't know how many pills he had refined. Not to mention the most common low-grade yellow-level spirit pill. Chu Fengmian had even refined earth-level and heaven-level spirit pills. In the blink of an eye, he had already gathered the spiritual energy of the bone-tempering pill and integrated it into Chu Fengmian's body. If one was inexperienced in refining pills, they might only be able to absorb 50% or even 40% of the spiritual energy. The rest of the spiritual energy would directly float out. However, for someone like Chu Fengmian who had refined countless pills, this small bone-tempering pill was enough to be refined in an instant. In less than half a minute, the bone-tempering pill was completely refined by Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian could feel that his body was now stronger than before. The pain in his leg had also clearly improved. What made Chu Fengmian even more surprised was that the second spiritual pulse in his body had actually started to loosen because of the bone-tempering pill's spiritual energy. If he could open the second spiritual pulse, Chu Fengmian's strength would have a qualitative leap. Continue. In Chu Fengmian's eyes, there was a hint of determination. He picked up another bone-tempering pill and put it into his mouth. After a few minutes, the bone-tempering pill in front of Chu Fengmian was already more than half refined. On Chu Fengmian's arm, a golden thread was slowly condensing. If anyone saw Chu Fengmian now, they would definitely be shocked. Chu Fengmian's current appearance was exactly what one would look like when one was about to open a spiritual pulse. Opening a spirit vein required a lot of resources, as well as the help of experts. Only then would it be possible. For example, the current number 1 genius of the Lin Mansion, Lin Yinfeng, was born with 5 spiritual pulses. Later on, in order to increase his talent, the Lin Mansion spent a lot of money to purchase 2 Earth-level spirit pills, chilling soul pills. They also spent a lot of money to invite 2 wind-controlling realm experts to jointly activate the chilling soul pills to open 2 of Lin Yunfeng's spiritual pulses, allowing him to open all 7 spiritual pulses. However, the price paid was enough to suffocate the Lin Mansion for 100 years. Now, the entire Lin Mansion was shrinking their resources because of this. However, Chu Fengmian was able to forcefully open his own spiritual meridians with just a few bone-tempering pills. This was something that had never been seen before. Just a little more. Chu Fengmian roared in his mind. He had already sensed that the second spiritual vein was about to open, but it was still lacking some spiritual energy. Chu Fengmian grabbed the remaining 8 bone-tempering pills in front of him and put them into his mouth at the same time. In an instant, he gathered the spiritual energy in the pills and rushed towards the second spiritual pulse. Chu Fengmian's expression remained unchanged as the pain of his shattered spirit meridians assaulted him once again. Countless beads of sweat dripped down his face as Chu Fengmian paid full attention to the spirit meridians in his body. Bam! Suddenly, a sound rang in Chu Fengmian's mind. After this sound, waves of pure spiritual energy gushed out from Chu Fengmian's body, filling Chu Fengmian with strength. At the same time, the second spiritual pulse on Chu Fengmian's arm was already lit up. Seeing this, Chu Fengmian's lips curled into a smile. Chapter 5. In just one day, he had opened 2 spiritual veins. If this were to spread, everyone would think that Chu Fengmian was a monster. It was already extremely difficult to open one spiritual vein by relying on one's own strength, let alone opening 2 in one day. This broken bone rebirth technique is indeed worthy of being the number 1 technique. Chu Fengmian sighed in his heart. However, only a person with a firm will like Chu Fengmian could cultivate this broken bone rebirth technique to open up a spiritual vein. For normal spirit masters, breaking and reconstructing spiritual veins countless times was enough to make them faint from the pain. Once they fainted, they would die. Because of this, there were very few people who could cultivate this broken bone rebirth technique. In his previous life, Chu Fengmian had suffered so much that he was unable to cultivate. This time, he finally had the chance to cultivate. How could Chu Fengmian give it up? When he opened the second spiritual vein, Chu Fengmian discovered that his body's strength was several times stronger than before. In terms of strength, it was more than 10 times stronger than before. Third level of the bone tempering stage. Chu Fengmian felt for a moment. As expected, his realm had also entered the 3rd level of the bone tempering stage due to the opening of the spiritual vein. In theory, 35 bone tempering pills were enough to allow a 1st level of the bone tempering stage to enter the 2nd level of the bone tempering stage. However, this was only for ordinary martial artists. For ordinary martial artists, absorbing 50% of the spiritual energy in a pill was already extremely difficult. However, Chu Fengmian was able to absorb 100% of the spiritual energy without any loss. Because of this, he was able to rely on the 35% bone-tempering pill to step into the third layer of the bone-tempering realm in one go. Chu Fengmian stood up and secretly activated the phantom body technique. Immediately, Chu Fengmian's figure moved at an astonishing speed within the room. In this room, there were 3 figures of Chu Fengmian. 2 of them were illusions created by his speed. Now that he had entered the third level of the bone-tempering stage, Chu Fengmian could finally activate the phantom body technique. Although he could only create 2 illusions and not reach the legendary level of 10 million illusions, Chu Fengmian was confident that he could defeat spirit masters below the 5th level of the bone-tempering stage. Let's go out and practice. Chu Fengmian pushed open the door to his room and looked up at the night sky. His body moved about in the courtyard, repeating the illusory images to familiarize himself with the phantom body technique. By the time Chu Feng was resting, the sky had already turned bright. Chu Fengmian didn't feel sleepy, even though he didn't sleep the whole night. On the contrary, he was extremely spirited. For martial artists, cultivating was much more spirited than sleeping. For example, many martial artists could stay awake for dozens or even hundreds of years and cultivate martial arts at any time. Chu Fengmian finally familiarized himself with the phantom body technique and cultivated it to the small success stage. Chu Fengmian was originally an extremely talented person. In his previous life, he was only unable to activate his spiritual energy, so naturally, he was unable to cultivate. But this time, in a single night, Chu Fengmian had comprehended the phantom shadow movement technique to a small success stage. In this way, even if it wasn't enough to defeat a martial artist at the 7th level of the bone-tempering stage, he would still be in an undefeatable position. Today is the day of the salary distribution. Chu Fengmian lowered his head and pondered for a moment. Today was the middle of the month, the day of the monthly salary distribution. Normally, Chu Fengmian's salary would be distributed by the outer mansion disciples of the Lin Mansion. When it was in Chu Fengmian's hands, it had already been deducted countless times. At that time, Chu Fengmian was angry but didn't dare to say anything. After all, without strength, everything was just empty talk. But this time it was different. Chu Fengmian, who had already stepped into the 3rd level of the bone-tempering stage, already had a place in the Lin Mansion's outer mansion. This time, it was Chu Fengmian's turn to receive his salary. Chu Fengmian's lips curled into a smile as he strode towards the spiritual elixir hall in the outer mansion. The spiritual elixir hall was the place where the monthly salary was distributed. For martial artists, the best salary was elixir pills. Therefore, the Lin Mansion disciples received a different amount of elixir pills every month. Chu Fengmian walked in the Lin Mansion's outer mansion. Many of the outer mansion disciples had already woken up early to receive their elixir pills. When they saw Chu Fengmian, a strange look appeared in their eyes. Normally, Chu Fengmian wouldn't dare to receive his elixir pills by himself. Usually, he would be led by others. What was going on this time? Especially now, many people had already noticed that Chu Fengmian's temperament was completely different from the previous Chu Fengmian. It was as if he was a completely different person. Could it be that Chu Fengmian can really cultivate? He has stepped into the bone-tempering stage? Some of the outer mansion disciples discussed. The news of Chu Fengmian defeating Chao Dahai had already spread throughout the Lin Mansion's outer mansion. After all, everyone knew that Chu Fengmian was a piece of trash. Now that he had suddenly defeated Chao Dahai, they were all extremely surprised. But so what if he has stepped in the bone-tempering stage? A martial artist with only one spiritual pulse is still a piece of trash. An outer mansion disciple said disdainfully. A martial artist with only one spiritual pulse was no different from a piece of trash. It would be difficult for him to step into the body-tempering stage in his lifetime. He could only be said to be slightly better than an ordinary person. Looks like this kid is going to the spiritual elixir hall to receive his elixir pills. Let's go and take a look. An outer mansion disciple said with a smile. He pulled a few other outer mansion disciples beside him and quickly walked towards the spiritual elixir hall. He wanted to see Chu Fengmian make a fool of himself. Chu Fengmian could see the ridicule and disdain in their eyes. However, Chu Fengmian wasn't interested in dealing with these people one by one. Defeating Chao Dahai was only Chu Fengmian's first step. What Chu Fengmian wanted to do next was to become the Lin Mansion master. Early in the morning, there was a long queue in the spiritual elixir hall. However, only the outer mansion disciples came to line up. Those who had some status in the outer mansion didn't need to line up. When they arrived, people would take the initiative to make way for them. Oh, isn't this Butler Chu? Why are you here personally to receive your elixir pills today? Just as Chu Fengmian arrived at the entrance of the spiritual elixir hall, an untimely voice rang out. A man with a few scars on his face was standing at the entrance of the spiritual elixir hall. He looked at Chu Fengmian with a cold smile. Just now, he was the one who mocked Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian raised his head and looked at the man who spoke. This man's name was Lin Go. He was an outer mansion disciple of the Lin Mansion. Although his aptitude wasn't high, and he was only at the 4th level of the bone tempering stage, he was a proud subordinate of the deputy butler of the Lin Mansion because he was good at flattering people. He had some status in the Lin Mansion's outer mansion. Normally, Lin Go would often pick on Chu Fengmian. However, at that time, Chu Fengmian's strength was low and he couldn't do anything to Lin Go. Chu Fengmian's lips curled into a cold smile. Chapter 6. Green-skinned dog. I'm here to collect my elixir. It's not something a servant like you can control. A dog like you should just stand aside obediently. Your master didn't even say anything. How dare you talk to me? Chu Fengmian glanced at Lin Go and mocked him. Lin Go's face had a few scars due to battle. Many of the scars on his face were necrotic and green. Therefore, many people in the Lin Mansion called Lin Go green-skinned dog behind his back. However, they only dared to call him that secretly. None of them dared to face Lin Go. After all, Lin Go was backed by the deputy housekeeper of the Lin Mansion's outer mansion. He was the number 1 person in the Lin Mansion's outer mansion. It was definitely not a good thing to offend him. Did Chu Fengmian eat too much medicine today and hurt his brain? He actually scolded Lin Go. Many of the Lin Mansion's outer mansion disciples were shocked when they saw this scene. With Chu Fengmian's usual style, he didn't even dare to speak loudly in front of Lin Go. However, he actually scolded Lin Go today. One had to know that Lin Go hated these 3 words the most. Indeed, when Lin Go heard the 3 words green-skinned dog, his face instantly changed and a surge of anger surged up his heart. If they weren't in the Lin Mansion, Lin Go would have taken action immediately. What? Since I called you a dog, you can only accept it obediently. I'm the chief housekeeper of the outer mansion. Calling you a dog is a gift to you. Chu Fengmian sneered when he saw Lin Go's face change rapidly. As he spoke, Chu Fengmian strode forward and stood in front of Lin Go. Get lost. You don't have the right to enter the spiritual elixir hall. He wanted Lin Go to make way for him. Chu Fengmian, do you really think you're the chief housekeeper of the Lin Mansion's outer mansion? Do you want me to make way for you? Lin Go looked at Chu Fengmian and said angrily. He didn't know what was going on with Chu Fengmian. However, if he made way for trash like Chu Fengmian, he wouldn't be able to stay in the Lin Mansion any longer. I'm here today. Let's see if you have the ability to make me move. Lin Go stood in front of Chu Fengmian with a cold smile. It was true that he could not take the initiative to attack Chu Fengmian in the Lin Mansion. However, he wanted to see what Chu Fengmian could do with his strength of level 4 bone tempering stage. You said it yourself. Are you looking for a beating? Chu Fengmian's eyes flickered. Chu Fengmian's figure suddenly rushed over and arrived in front of Lin Go in an instant. What? This speed was so fast that even Lin Go could not react in time. Chu Fengmian's hand had already grabbed Lin Go's clothes. Lin Go was directly thrown out of the spiritual elixir hall by Chu Fengmian. He fiercely smashed into the ground, and even a few bricks were smashed into pieces. Insolent. As the head steward of the Lin Mansion, it's time for me to teach the servants a lesson. Chu Fengmian glanced at Lin Go and said coldly, So fast. This is Chu Fengmian. Even a level 5 bone tempering stage martial artist might not be able to achieve such speed. Look at Chu Fengmian's strength. To be able to grab Lin Go and throw him out, he should at least be at level 3 bone tempering stage. When did Chu Fengmian have such strength? Could it be that Chu Fengmian has been hiding his strength all this time? Now he finally revealed it? Many of the Lin Mansion's outer mansion disciples looked at the scene in disbelief. When did Chu Fengmian's strength become so terrifying? Previously, they did not believe in the rumor that Chu Fengmian had defeated Chao Dahai. After all, with Chao Dahai's strength, any disciple from the Lin Mansion could easily defeat him. It was normal for Chu Fengmian to be able to defeat Chao Dahai. However, Lin Go was a true Lin Mansion's outer mansion disciple. He did not even resist and was directly thrown out of the spiritual elixir hall by Chu Fengmian. This was simply unbelievable. Damn it, Chu Fengmian, do you dare to have a real fight with me? Don't use a sneak attack. Lin Go crawled up from the ground. As a warrior, he did not suffer any injuries from this fall. However, his face was covered in dust, which made him look extremely miserable. Being thrown out of the spiritual elixir hall by Chu Fengmian in front of so many Lin Mansion disciples was an absolute humiliation to Lin Go. Oh, looks like I haven't taught you enough of a lesson. Chu Fengmian glanced at Lin Go with killing intent in his eyes. Lin Go was a lackey raised by the Lin Mansion's outer mansion to deal with Chu Fengmian. Today, Chu Fengmian would cripple this lackey and let the Lin Mansion's outer mansion disciples understand that the current Chu Fengmian was no longer the Chu Fengmian of the past. Lin Mansion, those who offend their superiors die. Chu Fengmian spat out a few words coldly. Chu Fengmian's body moved again. He crossed the distance of more than 10 meters in an instant and appeared in front of Lin Go. This time, Lin Go was prepared. He had already predicted Chu Fengmian's speed. The moment Chu Fengmian made his move, Lin Go had already thrown a punch at Chu Fengmian. Lin Mansion's middle-grade yellow class martial skill, Lin Ba's Fist. Lin Go had benefited a lot from following the outer mansion's deputy housekeeper. This middle-grade yellow class martial skill could only be learned by martial artists who were at least at the 5th level of the bone-tempering realm. Lin Go was only at the 4th level of the bone-tempering realm, but he had already learned it. It was obvious that he had something to do with the Lin Mansion's deputy housekeeper. This punch was extremely domineering. It was a punch of pure strength. It was aimed at Chu Fengmian's robust body. If Chu Fengmian was hit, even if he didn't die, he would lose half his life. Chu Fengmian die. So what if you have opened your spiritual meridians? The difference between the 3rd and 4th level of the bone-tempering realm is not something you can surpass. You should just obediently become a cripple. Lin Go's lips curled into an arrogant smile. If this punch landed on Chu Fengmian's body, Chu Fengmian's spiritual meridians would be damaged. At that time, the spiritual energy that Chu Fengmian had just recovered would be wasted. Is that so? Chu Fengmian's lips curled into a smile. The moment that punch landed on Chu Fengmian's body suddenly shattered. An illusion. The Chu Fengmian that Lin Go had just hit was only an illusion. What? This sudden change caused Lin Go to be unable to adapt. Almost at the same time, Chu Fengmian kicked at Lin Go. Bam! Chu Fengmian did not hold back in this kick. Immediately, Lin Go's body flew over and smashed into the wall of the courtyard. Lin Go, who was lying on the ground, spat out a large mouthful of blood. He was on the verge of losing consciousness. What is Chu Fengmian trying to do? Many people saw Chu Fengmian walking towards Lin Go, who was lying on the ground. Under the astonished gazes of the crowd, Chu Fengmian's foot had already stepped on Lin Go's right arm. Didn't you want to cripple me? Today, I will cripple you first. As he spoke, Chu Fengmian's foot stomped down. Crack! A crisp sound rang out as Lin Go's right arm was crushed by the stomp. Ah! Lin Go's blood-curdling scream sent chills down the spines of the surrounding Lin Mansion disciples. Since when did Chu Fengmian have such means? Not only his right arm, but Lin Go's left arm and legs were also crushed by Chu Fengmian's stomp. Only when Lin Go fainted did Chu Fengmian send him flying with a kick. 2 outer mansion disciples ran over from afar and hurriedly brought Lin Go away. Ruthless, truly ruthless. It seems like the outer mansion of the Lin Mansion is going to change. Chu Fengmian has actually grown up. Chu Fengmian is indeed worthy of having the bloodline of the previous mansion master. Indeed, there is no dog in the Tiger clan. Chapter 7. In the Lin Mansion, strength was the prerequisite that determined one's status. Without strength, even if Chu Fengmian had the identity of the Lin Mansion's external housekeeper, any ordinary disciple of the Lin Mansion would not care about Chu Fengmian. This time, when he displayed his strength, he truly had the identity and status. This time, none of the Lin Mansion disciples dared to obstruct Chu Fengmian. They all took the initiative to open up a path for Chu Fengmian to enter. Hand over this month's salary. The person in charge of the spiritual elixir hall was only an ordinary Lin Mansion outer mansion disciple. When he saw Chu Fengmian walking in, his face became extremely flustered. When he heard Chu Fengmian's question, he stuttered for a long time before speaking. Housekeeper Chu, your salary for this month has been taken away by someone else. Taken away by someone else? Chu Fengmian's eyes were cold. In the Lin Mansion, there was no such thing as taking away someone else's salary. Previously, Chu Fengmian's salary was taken away by someone else because he was not strong enough. This time, someone actually dared to take away his salary. Please forgive me, housekeeper. It's my fault. The outer mansion disciple hurriedly lowered his head and apologized. Originally, he did not treat Chu Fengmian as the outer mansion chief housekeeper. When someone came to take Chu Fengmian's salary, he naturally gave it to them. After all, Chu Fengmian had never pursued this matter. However, this time, Chu Fengmian actually came personally. When Chu Fengmian was teaching Lin Go a lesson, the outer mansion disciple also saw it. He also understood that the current Chu Fengmian was no longer the Chu Fengmian of the past. He did not want to end up like Lin Go and have his limbs broken. He could only obediently apologize. Speak. Who took it away? Chu Fengmian looked at the outer mansion disciple and said coldly, It's Lin Mo and Lin Yi. The outer mansion disciple replied respectfully. As expected, hearing these two names, Chu Fengmian's eyes were filled with killing intent. In the past, Chu Fengmian was beaten to death by these two people. It seemed like this time, Chu Fengmian would seek justice. Take out Lin Go's salary. Chu Fengmian looked at the outer mansion disciple and said coldly. Hearing Chu Fengmian's words, the outer palace disciple said with some difficulty. However, when he saw Chu Fengmian's ice-cold gaze, he did not hesitate to take out a bottle of medicinal pills and handed it to Chu Fengmian. Lin Go was now a cripple. Even if he wanted to take revenge, it would take a few months. However, if he offended Chu Fengmian now, he would probably end up like Lin Go. This is Lin Go's salary for this month. In the future, take the initiative to send your monthly salary to me. If there's even a little less, you'll end up like Lin Go. Chu Fengmian glanced at the outer palace disciple and said coldly, Yes. That outer palace disciple hurriedly nodded his head. Chu Fengmian took the jade bottle and strode out of the spirit elixir hall. Only after Chu Fengmian left did the outer palace disciple finally let out a sigh of relief. How could this Chu Fengmian be so strong? This won't do. I have to report this to the deputy manager. That outer mansion disciple muttered to himself for a while before changing to another person to distribute the salary. He then left by himself. In a spacious courtyard in the outer palace of the Lin Mansion, two burly men were sitting in front of a stone table. There were several jade bottles placed in front of them. Within each of the jade bottles, there were countless spirit elixirs. Lin Yi, why do you think Chu Fengmian came back to the Lin Mansion? Lin Mo looked at Lin Yi in front of him and asked doubtfully. Moreover, I heard that he has condensed his spiritual pulse and became a warrior. He even defeated Chao Dahai. It seems that this brat is still very obedient. He's still alive. Lin Yi sneered at the side. However, even if he became a warrior, so what? He's just a piece of trash with a spiritual pulse. Let's send him some salary in 2 days and see if he's a human or a ghost. This Chu Fengmian salary is shockingly high. 100 bone tempering elixirs and 10 body tempering elixirs a month. Lin Mo looked at the elixirs on the stone table in front of him and revealed a greedy expression. This salary was enough for half a year of their salary. This salary will belong to the two of us in the future. It's a waste to give it to that trash Chu Fengmian. Speaking of which, we have to thank that trash. Otherwise, how could we have improved so quickly? Lin Yi laughed. Both of them had broken through to level 5 bone-tempering realm because of Chu Fengmian's salary. In the outer palace of the Lin Mansion, they were considered top figures. Bam! While the two of them were laughing, a loud sound came from outside the courtyard. Lin Mo and Lin Yi hurriedly ran out and saw that the wooden door of the courtyard had been kicked open. "Who is it? Which blind fool dares to be so presumptuous in our place?" Lin Mo and Lin Yi roared at the same time. In the outer palace of the Lin Mansion, there were very few people who dared to go against the two of them. Chu Fengmian, seeing the figure that walked in from outside, Lin Mo's face was filled with surprise. Then he sneered. "Chu Fengmian, I didn't expect you to be able to return to the Lin Mansion alive. You're quite tough." Seeing Chu Fengmian, Lin Mo sneered without restraint. "The two of us just wanted to see if you were a human or a ghost. We didn't expect you to come knocking on our door. I heard that you've already opened your spiritual meridian and become a martial artist. But trash will always be trash. A trash with a spiritual meridian is just a slave in the Lin Mansion." Lin Yi said in a sinister voice. His eyes were filled with disdain. In their opinion, even if Chu Fengmian had successfully opened his spiritual meridian and become a martial artist, so what? Strength was not something that could be improved in a day. A martial artist who had just broken through was just like an ant in their eyes. Chu Fengmian did not waste any time. He just said coldly, "Hand over this month's salary." "Salary?" Hearing Chu Fengmian's words, Lin Mo and Lin Yi laughed together. "Chu Fengmian, it seems like your brain is damaged. How dare you ask for your salary from us?" Lin Mo said with a mocking smile. "We said before that your salary every month will belong to the two of us. It seems like we haven't taught you a lesson yet." "Lin Mo, let me deal with him." Lin Yi took a step forward and said eerily. Chapter 8. Lin Ye's face turned ferocious as he threw a punch at the corner of Chu Fengmian's mouth. Last time, Chu Fengmian had broken a few of his front teeth, causing him to be ridiculed everywhere. Now that he had the chance, he would definitely take revenge on Chu Fengmian. Lin Yi was a 5th-level bone-tempering stage martial artist, which was 2 levels higher than Chu Fengmian's 3rd-level bone-tempering stage. For martial artists, it was difficult to surpass a level higher, let alone 2 levels higher. Logically speaking, Chu Fengmian would definitely be defeated by Lin Ye's punch. However, the moment Lin Ye's punch arrived in front of Chu Fengmian's figure suddenly disappeared. Only an afterimage was left on the spot, causing Lin Yi to miss. "Be careful, this kid seems to have learned some kind of movement technique," Lin Mo hurriedly shouted from the side. Previously, when Chu Fengmian defeated Xiao Dahai, it was rumored that Chu Fengmian had used a movement technique to dodge Xiao Dahai's punch. This time, a similar scene reminded Lin Mo of it. Movement technique? Lin Ye's eyes flickered as he suddenly saw Chu Fengmian attacking him from behind. Lin Ye's figure instantly turned around and threw out a palm strike. Wind-breaking palm. This palm strike swept up a gust of wind as it slammed toward Chu Fengmian's chest. However, Lin Yi felt an illusory sensation. He did not expect that his palm would hit an illusory figure. In an instant, Chu Fengmian had condensed 2 afterimages. "You're just missing a few front teeth. Looks like I'll break all your teeth today. Let's see if you 2 old dogs can still bite me." Chu Fengmian snorted coldly. His figure suddenly appeared beside Lin Yi, and he immediately kicked at Lin Yi. "Ah!" Lin Yi let out a blood-curdling scream as all the teeth in his mouth fell out in an instant. Chu Fengmian's kick was aimed at the corner of Lin Ye's mouth. Lin Yi spat out a large amount of blood from the corner of his mouth. "Swallow it." Before Lin Yi could spit it out, Chu Fengmian kicked him again. This time, Lin Yi did not even have the strength to fight back as he was sent flying by the kick. Lin Yi swallowed the broken teeth in his mouth along with a large amount of blood due to the huge impact. Lin Ye's body flew out of the courtyard with a kick. His eyes closed and he fainted. In just one move, Lin Yi, who was at the 5th level of the bone-tempering stage, was defeated by Chu Fengmian. "This is Lin Yi?" Outside the courtyard, many Lin Mansion disciples suddenly noticed a figure flying out. When they got closer, all of them sucked in a breath of cold air. The person who was thrown out of the courtyard was actually Lin Yi. Lin Yi, who was at the 5th level of the bone tempering stage, could be considered one of the top experts in the Lin Mansion's outer mansion. They could not believe that Lin Yi had been forcefully thrown out of the courtyard. Who did it? Many disciples of the Lin Mansion gathered around and peered into the courtyard. Among them stood two figures facing each other. They were Chu Fengyan and Lin Mo. Is that Chu Fengyan? Could it be that he was the one who threw Lin Yi out? When the Lin Mansion disciples saw Chu Fengyan standing in the courtyard, they could not believe their eyes. They could not believe that Chu Fengyan, who was still a cripple a few days ago, had the strength to defeat Lin Yi now. But now, there was no other person in the courtyard. It could only be Chu Fengyan. Chu Fengyan, are you courting death? Lin Mo looked at Chu Fengyan as his voice was squeezed out from the gaps between his teeth. Lin Yi was like a brother to him. The two of them were able to establish a foothold in the Lin Mansion's outer mansion because of their unity. But now, Lin Yi was defeated by Chu Fengyan in front of him. Moreover, he was so miserable that all of his teeth were broken. Lin Mo wanted to save Lin Yi, but Chu Fengyan was faster. Before Lin Mo could make a move, Chu Fengyan kicked Lin Yi out. Lin Mo, you're just a dog of the Lin Mansion. How dare you bark at your master? Chu Fengyan looked at Lin Mo and shook his head. It seems like you still don't understand how to do things in the Lin Mansion. Today, as the chief steward of the outer mansion, it's time for me to teach you a lesson. Shameless boasting. Lin Mo's face was ashen as he roared. Don't think that you can be arrogant in the Lin Mansion just because you have a few fortuitous encounters. The gap between the realms is not something that can be bridged by your fortuitous encounters. The two of you are the ones who are really arrogant. How dare you snatch my salary? It seems like if I don't teach you two old dogs a lesson today, you'll really think that I'm useless. Chu Fengyan sneered as his body moved. Chu Fengyan's real body had already disappeared, leaving only a shadow in the original place. Chu Fengyan is really going to fight with Lin Mo. Even if Chu Fengyan has some accumulation, he's too arrogant to fight with Lin Mo. In terms of strength, Lin Mo is countless times stronger than Lin Yi. Some of the outer mansion disciples shook their heads as they watched the battle in the courtyard. None of them dared to believe that Chu Fengyan could defeat Lin Mo. After all, Chu Fengyan was still at level 3 of the bone tempering stage, while Lin Mo's strength had reached the peak of level 5 of the bone tempering stage. How could such a gap be bridged? 100 feet fist. Lin Mo let out a long howl as his hands began to move. In the blink of an eye, he had thrown over 100 punches at Chu Fengyan. Lin Mo could see that Chu Fengyan's true strength was not that strong. He was only relying on his powerful movement technique to avoid the attacks. Therefore, Lin Mo threw hundreds of punches in all directions, intending to blast Chu Fengyan out of hiding. Phantom. Chu Fengyan's expression did not change, but his body moved. All of a sudden, he appeared on Lin Mo's flank and kicked at Lin Mo die. Lin Mo's sudden appearance seemed to be within Lin Mo's expectations. Lin Mo's figure turned around in an instant and punched towards Chu Fengyan, who had suddenly appeared. The two punches collided, and the explosive force caused Chu Fengyan to retreat. Sure enough, even if Chu Fengyan's strength has improved, he is still no match for Lin Mo. The Lin Mansion disciples outside the courtyard shook their heads and said, this scene had already decided Chu Fengyan's defeat. Today I will cripple you. Seeing that Chu Fengyan was beaten back, Lin Mo's face revealed a hint of viciousness. He moved his feet and chased after Chu Fengyan, throwing a punch at Chu Fengyan's chest. This punch contained Lin Mo's full strength. It could be seen that if it really hit Chu Fengyan's chest, Chu Fengyan's spiritual meridians would be broken. It's not certain who will cripple who. Just as Lin Mo was about to throw a punch with confidence, Chu Fengyan's figure suddenly appeared behind Lin Mo, causing his hair to stand on end. Since when did Chu Fengyan suddenly appear behind Lin Mo? The moment Lin Mo turned around, Chu Fengyan's fist had already landed on Lin Mo's chest. Suddenly, the two spiritual meridians in Lin Mo's body shattered with a bang, showing signs of breaking. Chapter 9. What? Why did Chu Fengyan suddenly appear behind Lin Mo? Wasn't Chu Fengyan beaten by Lin Mo just now? Are my eyes playing tricks on me? Voices of astonishment rang out continuously. The Lin Mansion disciples outside the courtyard couldn't believe the scene in front of them. They widened their eyes, trying to figure out what was going on. Just a moment ago, what they saw was Chu Fengmian being chased by Lin Mo. However, in an instant, Chu Fengmian appeared behind Lin Mo and defeated him with a punch. What exactly happened? Even though they saw it with their own eyes, they couldn't understand. Just now, it seemed like there were two Chu Fengmians. Only Chu Fengmian himself knew what had happened just now. A shadow. The Chu Fengmian who was beaten by Lin Mo was actually a shadow condensed by Chu Fengmian using the phantom body technique. This shadow was half real and half illusory. It contained all of Chu Fengmian's strength, but it could only last for 3 seconds. Just now, when this shadow collided with Lin Mo's 2 punches, the power contained in it made Lin Mo feel that this shadow was Chu Fengmian's real body. As a result, he didn't realize that Chu Fengmian had secretly circled behind Lin Mo. Lin Mo was completely defeated with 1 punch. The phantom body technique was one of the strongest body techniques in the victorious martial continent. When cultivated to the great completion, the shadow condense could last for several days. With Chu Fengmian's current strength, it could only last for about 3 seconds. However, it was enough to defeat Lin Mo with 1 blow. Where are the elixirs you have accumulated? Chu Fengmian walked to Lin Mo, who was lying on the ground, and stepped on Lin Mo's chest. Lin Mo, whose spiritual meridians were already broken, spat out a lot of blood under this foot. I don't know, Lin Mo said intermittently. You're not going to say? Chu Fengmian's eyes revealed some killing intent. He lifted his foot again and stepped on Lin Mo's chest. Chu Fengmian had activated his spiritual power for this kick. Lin Mo felt as if his internal organs were about to be stomped out of his body. He was about to lose half of his life. Yes, it's under the bed in the room. This time, Lin Mo didn't dare to hide it anymore. He could see that the current Chu Fengmian was completely different from before. If he didn't say anything, he might really die at Chu Fengmian's feet today. If the spirit vein was broken, there was still a way to treat it. However, if the person died, there was no way to live anymore. Scram! Chu Fengmian shot a glance at Lin Mo and kicked him out of the courtyard. From now on, this courtyard belongs to me. With a cold voice, the disciples of the Lin Mansion who were watching from outside the courtyard retreated in a panic. After this battle, Chu Fengmian's reputation in the Lin Mansion's outer mansion was completely resounding. Being able to defeat Lin Mo and Lin Yi, Chu Fengmian's current strength was already at the top of the Lin Mansion's outer mansion. The only person who was stronger than the two of them was Lin Yang, the deputy chief of the Lin Mansion's outer mansion. The strongest person in the Lin Mansion's outer mansion was Li Xing, a martial artist at the peak of the 7th level of the bone tempering stage. The Li family was the #1 family in the outer mansion of the Lin Mansion. The inner mansion of the Lin Mansion was filled with members of the Lin family. However, the outer mansion of the Lin Mansion was filled with members of the Lin family. The Li clan was one of the big clans in the outer palace. Li Xing was the #1 genius in the Li clan. He had already reached the 7th level of the bone tempering stage at such a young age. In the Lin Mansion, he could be considered an upper-middle-class person. It was because of this that he was able to obtain the position of deputy housekeeper of the Lin Mansion. If it wasn't for the fact that the head housekeeper was Chu Fengmian, Li Xing would definitely be the head housekeeper. It was because of this that Li Xing hated Chu Fengmian to the core. If I defeat Lin Yi and Lin Mo and seize their courtyards, I'm afraid that Li Xing will soon come knocking on my door. Chu Fengmian sat in his room and thought to himself. Lin Yi and Lin Mo were both Li Xing's subordinates. In the Lin Mansion's outer palace, Li Xing was a person who could cover the sky with one hand. To a large extent, Chu Fengmian's situation in the outer palace was caused by Li Xing. I'll deal with whatever comes my way. As long as I'm strong enough, even if Li Xing comes, I won't reject him. Chu Fengmian sat on his bed without any hint of panic in his heart. Li Xing, the deputy housekeeper of the outer palace, was someone that Chu Fengmian had to defeat sooner or later. The only thing he needed to do now was to increase his strength. In front of Chu Fengmian, there were more than 30 jade bottles of different sizes. All of them were filled with elixirs. Other than the salary that originally belonged to Chu Fengmian on the stone table, there were more of Lin Mo's and Lin Ye's savings. Lin Mo and Lin Yi were considered evil tyrants in the Lin Mansion's outer palace. Many of the Lin Mansion's disciples' salaries were embezzled by the two of them. Currently, there were a total of 500 bone-tempering pills in these jade bottles. Among them, there were 20 body-honing pills that had a tinge of blue. 10 of these pills came from Chu Fengmian's salary this month. The other 10 pills were accumulated by Lin Mo and Lin Yi. 20 body-honing pills and 500 bone-tempering pills. This was already a huge fortune. Chu Fengmian had once accumulated 35 bone-tempering pills for a long time. In an instant, Chu Fengmian had made a fortune from Lin Mo and Lin Yi. These elixirs must have been accumulated by Lin Mo to break through to the 6th level of the bone-tempering stage. Now they're mine. Chu Fengmian glanced at the elixirs and did not hold back. He immediately picked up a bottle of bone-tempering pills and poured them into his mouth. In one breath, Chu Fengmian swallowed 10 bone-tempering pills. If others saw this, they might think that Chu Fengmian had really gone crazy. Refining elixirs had to be done step by step. One could not rush for instant success. If one swallowed too many elixirs in one go, one might not be able to refine the spiritual energy within. Instead, one's body would explode and die. However, in Chu Fengmian's previous life, he had refined quite a few heaven-level medicinal pills. If it weren't for Chu Fengmian's frail body, he would have swallowed 100 of these yellow-level medicinal pills in one go. After swallowing these 10 bone-tempering pills, the spiritual energy emitted from them was easily condensed by Chu Fengmian. The pure spiritual energy within was easily absorbed. At the same time, the impurities within were also expelled from Chu Fengmian's body. After swallowing and refining 100 bone-tempering pills, Chu Fengmian felt that the spiritual energy within the bone-tempering pills did not have much of an effect on his body. After all, the bone-tempering pill was the lowest of the low-grade yellow-level elixirs. At most, it could only be used by spirit masters below the 5th level of the bone-tempering stage. If he wanted to take another step forward, he could only swallow elixirs of a higher grade. Chu Fengmian's gaze landed on the other 2 different jade bottles. He picked up one of them, poured out a blue elixir, and placed it into his mouth. The body-tempering pill was a middle-grade yellow-level elixir. Once the body-tempering pill entered his mouth, the spiritual energy within it was 10 times stronger than the bone-tempering pill. This caused Chu Fengmian to feel that the 3rd spiritual pulse in his body was already showing signs of breaking through. Only with 3 spiritual pulses could one be considered to have some talent for cultivation. It was possible for one to surpass the bone-tempering stage and charge towards the higher body-tempering stage. Chu Fengmian cultivated the broken bone rebirth art. Every time Chu Fengmian refined an elixir, a large portion of the spiritual energy would be stored in the spiritual pulse. Afterwards, when the spiritual energy was stored enough, it would shatter in one fell swoop and regenerate into a new spiritual pulse. Under the influence of the body-tempering pill's spiritual energy, Chu Fengmian could already feel that the 3rd spiritual pulse in his body had already started to shatter. Every time a spiritual pulse shattered, it was actually an extremely dangerous matter. If it shattered, one could not gather new spiritual energy to reconstruct it, then one would directly become a cripple. Chapter 10. In the largest courtyard of the Lin Mansion's outer mansion, a tall man was sitting in the courtyard. Beside him, there were 7 to 8 maids. Some of them were holding fruits and feeding him, while others were fanning him to bring some coolness to this hot summer day. This kind of treatment could only be given to the real number 1 person in the Lin Mansion's outer mansion deputy housekeeper, Li Xing deputy housekeeper. Outside the courtyard, a few Lin Mansion disciples hurriedly walked in while supporting the 3 severely injured soul masters. "What's wrong?" Li Xing said casually as he reclined on a large chair and looked at the people below him. "What's the matter? Why are you so flustered?" In the Lin Mansion's outer mansion, he was like a local tyrant. Since young, he had been arrogant and condescending. That's right. What's the point of being flustered? If you ruin young Master Li's good mood, all of you will die. A maidservant beside Li Xing also spoke with a cold expression. In their eyes, these Lin Mansion disciples were like slaves who could be beaten and scolded at will. This, young Master Li, it's better for you to come and see for yourself. The few Lin Mansion disciples were clearly a little afraid of the maidservant's words as they spoke hesitantly. What's going on? Seeing the expressions of the Lin Mansion disciples, Li Xing stood up from his chair and walked to the side of the Lin Mansion disciples. He looked at the three severely injured people who were being supported. Lin Mo, Lin Yi, Lin Go. Seeing the three of them, Li Xing's face was a little surprised as he asked, "What's going on?" "It's because of Chu Fengyan," the Lin Mansion disciples replied. Chu Fengyan? Hearing this name, Li Xing's face was filled with resentment. What's going on? Did someone from the inner mansion come to stand up for that kid? That's not right. Who dares to stand up for that kid in front of young Master Lin? Could it be the third elder? Li Xing frowned. In the inner mansion, Chu Fengyan was not welcomed. Only the third elder had a good impression of Chu Fengyan. Chu Fengyan's position as the Lin Mansion's outer mansion housekeeper was fought for by the third elder. No, they were beaten up by Chu Fengyan. The Lin Mansion disciples hesitated and said, "What?" These words caused Li Xing's expression to change instantly. Isn't that kid a piece of trash? How could he beat the three of them to such a state? Li Xing said in disbelief. Lin Go aside, Lin Mo and Lin Yi were not ordinary people. In the outer mansion of the Lin Mansion, there were not many people who were their match. Today's miserable state was actually caused by a cripple like Chu Fengyan. How could Li Xing believe this? I'm not lying. Seeing Li Xing's disbelief, the few Lin Mansion disciples hurriedly explained. Young Master Li, if you don't believe me, you can go and see Chu Fengyan with your own eyes. I don't know what kind of fortuitous encounter this Chu Fengyan had, but he actually managed to open up his spirit meridians. His strength has improved tremendously. Damn it. How could this trash still be able to cultivate? Didn't this young master already use the spirit-devouring powder in his body? Li Xing's expression was extremely ferocious, as if he was about to go crazy. Damn it. This trash must not be able to continue cultivating. Even if his spirit meridians have been opened, this young master will still cripple him. Go and investigate. Go and find out what happened to this kid. Yes. The few Lin Mansion disciples hurriedly agreed and hurriedly left. You bunch of trash can't even defeat a piece of trash like Chu Fengyan. What's the use of this young master keeping you around? Get lost. Li Xing looked at Lin Mo, Lin Yi, and Lin Go and roared. The three of them scrambled away in a hurry. This won't do. If Chu Fengyan can cultivate, this is a matter of great importance. It seems like I have to report this to young Master Lin. Li Xing tidied his clothes and muttered to himself as he walked towards the inner mansion of the Lin Mansion. On the other side, time passed bit by bit. Chu Fengyan's clothes had been drenched countless times. After a full 20 hours, the spiritual energy in Chu Fengyan's body gradually stabilized. Open for me. The third complete spirit meridian appeared on Chu Fengyan's body. At the same time, Chu Fengyan's spiritual energy was much stronger than before. The third spirit meridian was opened. At the same time, Chu Fengyan's cultivation level had reached level 5 of the bone-tempering realm. In 2 days, Chu Fengyan had risen from level 1 of the bone-tempering realm to level 5 of the bone-tempering realm. This speed was definitely the fastest in the Lin Mansion, or even the entire martial Linlin city. However, Chu Fengyan was probably the only one who could achieve this speed. If it was an ordinary warrior, it would take at least half an hour to refine a bone-tempering pill. It was impossible for them to refine it in an instant like Chu Fengyan. Chu Fengyan had accumulated experience from his previous life. In terms of refining elixirs, not to mention warriors in the same realm. Even warriors in the body refining realm, divine sea realm, and wind controlling realm could not be compared to Chu Fengyan. In order to break through the spirit meridians in the top 10, Chu Fengyan was an out-and-out medicine jar. Now that he had accumulated all this experience, it was naturally easy for Chu Fengyan to refine these ordinary elixirs. Otherwise, these elixirs would have been enough for Chu Fengmian to refine for a period of time. Level 5 of the Bone Tempering Realm. I can finally try to use some sword skills. Chu Fengmian stood up, feeling the abundant power in his body. His face revealed a hint of joy. With this level of strength, he was not completely defenseless. In his previous life, Chu Fengmian did not understand spiritual energy, but he had forcefully comprehended the ultimate sword intent in the world. However, he could not hold a sword. Although his sword intent was unparalleled in the world, he did not have the ability to protect himself. This time, Chu Fengmian had the strength, and it was time for him to display his sword skills. I'll need to find a sword to practice swordsmanship. Chu Fengmian muttered to himself. Any swordsmanship required a sword to be used. In the past, Chu Fengmian wasn't even a warrior, so how could he have a sword? Chu Fengmian could be considered a warrior now. Naturally, he would need his own weapon. Chu Fengmian looked at the few remaining jade bottles on the bed, picked them up, and walked out of the Lin Mansion. In these jade bottles, there were still 200 bone-tempering pills that had not been used up. Now that Chu Fengmian had reached level 5 of the bone-tempering realm, these bone-tempering pills were useless. However, in the outside world, bone-tempering pills were still considered valuable elixirs. It was not difficult to use these bone-tempering pills to buy a sword. Let's go outside the Lin Mansion. Chapter 11. Chu Fengmian left the Lin Mansion and went straight to the market of Martial Linlin City. He entered a shop called the Thousand Weapons Pavilion. The Thousand Weapons Pavilion was one of the top shops in Martial Linlin City. It sold all kinds of weapons and was ranked in the top 3. However, the reason why Chu Fengmian chose the Thousand Weapons Pavilion wasn't just because of that. Chu Fengmian knew that behind the Thousand Weapons Pavilion was one of the most powerful sects in Martial Victorious Nation. It was the Tianjin sect. The Tianjin sect was a colossal force 10,000 years ago. In Chu Fengmian's memory, the Tianjin sect was even more powerful than it was 10,000 years ago. To be able to support a colossal force like the Tianjin sect, the Sky Sword Alliance had many chambers of commerce and shops. The Thousand Weapons Pavilion was one of them. Although Chu Fengmian had countless grudges against the Tianjin sect, the Tianjin sect Dao of weapon refinement was extremely amazing. Even the Sword Dao Master had praised it. The Thousand Weapons Pavilion was the best choice if you wanted to find a suitable sword. I'm Xian Jingtai, Butler Chu. Are you here to pick a suitable weapon? The shopkeeper of the Thousand Weapons Pavilion, Xian Jingtai, asked bluntly when he saw Chu Fengmian enter. Chu Fengmian's reputation in Martial Linlin City wasn't small. Xian Jingtai recognized Chu Fengmian at a glance. The cultivators who came to the Thousand Weapons Pavilion were all here for a suitable weapon. Chu Fengmian was currently empty-handed. As a cultivator, how could he not have a suitable weapon? That's right. Chu Fengmian nodded. At the same time, he glanced at Xian Jingtai. Xian Jingtai looked like an ordinary old man. However, Chu Fengmian could see that Xian Jingtai's movements weren't sluggish at all. Instead, he was extremely perfect. He was much more perfect than many young cultivators. His every movement seemed to be accumulating strength. When he encountered danger, he would be able to explode at any time. This was a kind of cultivation that could only be achieved by those who had reached an extremely high realm. Xian Jingtai was a true martial artist. He was even stronger than the elders of the Lin Mansion. Behind the 10,000 Weapons Pavilion was the Tianjin sect. As a shopkeeper of the 10,000 Weapons Pavilion, how could Xian Jingtai be unrelated to the Tianjin sect? While Chu Fengmian was sizing up Xian Jingtai's eyes were also fixed on Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian could tell that Xian Jingtai's eyes were filled with surprise. Come, Butler Chu, please come to the second floor. Xian Jingtai quickly recovered and said. He then led Chu Fengmian to a room on the second floor. The rooms on the second floor of the 10,000 Weapons Pavilion were specially prepared for martialists with status. When Chu Fengmian saw Xian Jingtai bring him to the second floor, he looked at Xian Jingtai in surprise. As the head butler of the Lin Mansion, there was naturally no problem for him to enter the room on the second floor. However, Chu Fengmian was a well-known piece of trash in Martial Forest City. It seemed that Xian Jingtai had already seen through something by treating a piece of trash with such respect. When they entered the room, Xian Jingtai smiled and said to Chu Fengyan, "It seems that this old man has to congratulate Butler Chu. You've finally stepped into the bone-tempering realm and become a true martialist." Xian Jingtai could tell Chu Fengyan's current strength as soon as he opened his mouth. Chu Fengyan wasn't surprised. Xian Jingtai was a martial artist with extremely high attainments in the martial way. He might even be a divine sea realm or wind-controlling realm expert. It wasn't surprising that he could tell Chu Fengyan's current strength. Xian Jingtai said, "Since you've become a martialist, you'll need a weapon. I wonder what kind of weapon Butler Chu needs." "A sword." Chu Fengyan said, "A light sword." "Oh." Xian Jingtai was surprised when he heard Chu Fengyan's reply. "Sword cultivator." It was an extremely common existence in the victorious martial country. Xian Jingtai wasn't surprised. However, Chu Fengyan asked for a light sword. Swords were also divided into light swords and heavy swords. Light swords were light and nimble, making it easier to perform sword arts. However, if it wasn't strong enough, it would be difficult to suppress the opponent. It relied heavily on sword intent. Only some sword grandmasters would choose light swords. Most sword cultivators would choose heavy swords that were much stronger. "I wonder what kind of light sword Butler Chu wants." Xian Jingtai asked again. The grades of weapons were like pills. They were divided into heaven, earth, black, and yellow. The value of each grade was several times, or even dozens of times. As the saying went, buy a sword with money. Chu Fengyan thought for a moment and said, "It would be best if it was a light sword above the black class." Black class. Xian Jingtai frowned and glanced at Chu Fengyan. Our Thousand Weapons Pavilion does have a black class, upper class light sword. It's enough to satisfy Butler Chu's request. However, the price, with Butler Chu's status, you're of course an honored guest of our Thousand Weapons Pavilion. However, I hope Butler Chu will know his limits. Xian Jingtai didn't continue, but everyone could understand what he meant. If he wanted a light sword above the black class, he did have it. However, this price wasn't something Chu Fengyan could afford. An ordinary yellow class lower class weapon would cost dozens of bone-tempering pills. A yellow class middle class weapon would cost hundreds of bone-tempering pills. Even in the entire martial forest city, there might not be anyone who could buy this black class upper grade light sword. Even a wealthy faction like the Lin clan might not be able to afford it. With Chu Fengyan's current wealth, he wouldn't even be able to afford it. However, since Chu Fengyan dared to ask, he had other methods in mind. "Butler Xian, do you feel something strange with your left hand recently?" Chu Fengyan didn't answer Xian Jingtai's question. Instead, he suddenly said something unrelated. For example, "It's a little sore and numb." Chu Fengyan's sudden words caused Xian Jingtai's eyes to widen. He stared at Chu Fengyan as if he wanted to see something from Chu Fengyan's body. Looking at Xian Jingtai's expression, Chu Fengyan smiled. "Am I right?" "Continue," Xian Jingtai said coldly. From his tone, one could hear the shock in it. That's right, Xian Jingtai's left hand was a little sore and numb. This was caused by his sword intent going berserk a few days ago when he was cultivating it. Even the Thousand Weapons Pavilion, no one knew about this. But now, Chu Fengyan had suddenly said it. Sword intent isn't something that can be affected by external forces. It can only be comprehended by oneself. Using external forces will only lead to the end of being provoked. Chapter 12. From the moment Chu Fengyan entered the Thousand Weapons Pavilion, he could tell that Xian Jingtai had some chaotic sword essence. Chu Fengyan knew that some sword cultivators who tried to forcefully cultivate their sword essence with the help of external forces would go berserk. That was why Chu Fengyan purposely said those words to Xian Jingtai. "Who are you?" This time, Xian Jingtai did not continue asking. Chu Fengyan's words proved that he was telling the truth. Chu Fengyan said calmly, "Shopkeeper Xian should know who I am. I am Chu Fengyan, the housekeeper of the Lin family." Good. Indeed, there is no mediocre person in the family Chu, Xian Jingtai said after staring at him for a long time. Indeed, everything you did in the Lin mansion was to hide. No wonder a piece of trash without a spiritual pulse could grow to such an extent in a single day. Xian Jingtai smiled. Housekeeper Chu, what brings you to the Thousand Weapons Pavilion? It's simple. I just want to discuss a business deal with you. Chu Fengyan said calmly. That profound grade upper rank light sword, I want it. Oh. Xian Jingtai did not refute him directly this time. Instead, he said with interest, let's cut to the chase. This black class upper light sword is called Qing Xian. It was refined by a guest elder of the Sky Sword sect. If placed outside, it would be worth at least 10 million bone-tempering pills. I wonder what kind of business head Steward Chu wants to do to buy this Qing Xian sword. Even for the Lin Mansion, 10 million bone-tempering pills would hurt their tendons and break their bones if they took it out. This Qing Xian sword had always been the treasure of the Thousand Weapons Pavilion. He had never thought that he would be able to sell it. Xian Jingtai wanted to see what kind of ability Chu Fengyan had to have such a big appetite to buy Xian Jingtai. What if I, Chu, can resolve the backlash of shopkeeper Xian's sword intent? Chu Fengyan said with a smile. In exchange for this Qing Xian sword, I will resolve the backlash of the sword while in shopkeeper Xian's body. I wonder if shopkeeper Xian is willing to accept this deal? Are you serious? Xian Jingtai raised his eyebrows and glanced at Chu Fengyan as if he couldn't believe what Chu Fengyan said. The backlash of sword intent was an extremely serious injury to all sword cultivators. It could even be said that it could not be healed in one's entire life. It was an eternal wound. If one wanted to resolve the effects of the sword essence's backlash, they would need a kind of heaven-grade elixir, the profound dissolving pill, and the help of countless experts to resolve it. The profound dissolving pill was a legendary heaven-rank pill. It had not appeared in the victorious martial country for 1,000 years, so the backlash from the sword intent was an injury that could not be healed. Xian Jingtai glanced at Chu Fengyan and said coldly, if you can really resolve the backlash of the sword intent, I, Xian Jingtai, am willing to do 3 things for you, let alone this Qing Xian sword. All right. Hearing Xian Jingtai's words, Chu Fengyan no longer hesitated. All of a sudden, a powerful sword will landed on Xian Jingtai's body. This is what a powerful sword intent. Who is it? It's that expert. Feeling the sudden sword will, Xian Jingtai looked around in shock. In front of this sword intent, Xian Jingtai felt that he was as weak as an ant. Not to mention Martial Forest City, even the entire victorious martial country might not be able to find such an expert. Only the rumored sword Dao experts of the Sky Sword sect could possess them. Don't panic. Guard your sword heart. Chu Fengyan roared, calming Xian Jingtai down quickly. The sword will turn into a giant snake in Xian Jingtai's body. Ever-changing? This is the ever-changing sword will. Seeing this scene, Xian Jingtai was even more stunned. This was a realm that could only be achieved by those who had reached the peak of sword will. Now that he saw it with his own eyes, Xian Jingtai was shocked. What shocked him even more was that this giant snake was inside Xian Jingtai's body, devouring all of the sword will left behind by the backlash. Soon, Xian Jingtai felt that the numbness in his left hand had disappeared. All of this happened in the blink of an eye. When Xian Jingtai came to his senses, his body had completely recovered. The remaining sword will in his body had already disappeared. Shopkeeper Xian, keep your word. Chu Fengyan looked at Xian Jingtai with a smile. Yes, Emoa. Quickly go and get the profound azure sword. Xian Jingtai quickly reacted and shouted at the door. Not long after, a pretty young girl walked in with a green light sword in her hand. This young girl was an ordinary person and not a martial artist. She was able to hold the cyan spiritual sword with ease. I, Xian Jingtai, have always kept my word. This profound azure sword now belongs to head steward Chu. Xian Jingtai took the profound azure sword and handed it to Chu Fengyan. Chu Fengyan took it. This Qing Xian sword was almost weightless and extremely light. If it was an ordinary warrior, it would be difficult to use such a light sword. After all, it was too light and difficult to use. However, for Chu Fengyan, this profound azure sword was perfect. Also I, Xian Jingtai, promised 3 things. If head steward Chu has any instructions, you can come to the Thousand Weapons Pavilion to find me. I, Xian Jingtai, will not decline. All right. Chu Fengyan took the profound azure sword and nodded lightly, then walked out of the Thousand Weapons Pavilion. After Chu Fengyan left, the girl called Mo came to Xian Jingtai's side and said, Uncle Xian, are your injuries really healed? Just now, the conversation between Chu Fengyan and Xian Jingtai had been heard clearly by this young girl named Mo. Not bad. Xian Jingtai stretched his body. It had been a long time since he felt so comfortable. The sword had always been in Xian Jingtai's body, causing him to feel uncomfortable all over. Now that the sword was removed, Xian Jingtai could finally relax. I never thought that there would be such a miraculous technique in this world. It seems that the rumors are not false. Xian Jingtai muttered to himself. The realm of infinite transformation had always only appeared in rumors. Sword was originally formless. How could it be used to make sword infinite transformation? But this time, Xian Jingtai finally understood that he had always been a frog in a well. There were many things in this world that he did not know. Is it really that miraculous? Then why didn't Uncle Xian capture that kid? I saw that he was only at bone tempering stage 5th level. You can naturally understand everything if you capture him. Mo asked curiously. Mo do you really think that kid was the one who removed my sword wool? Xian Jingtai looked at Mo and said with a smile. This brat is just a puppet. There's a terrifying existence behind him. Our Thousand Weapons Pavilion is finished after offending him. The ever-changing sword intent. Who would dare to believe that a bone-tempering stage 5th level brat could use it? Moreover, in the sword intent just now, Xian Jingtai had already seen through some tricks. Clear sword heart technique. The sword intent just now contained countless techniques of the Sky Sword sect and the aura of the clear heart technique. This also meant that the person who had just attacked was definitely an expert from the Sky Sword sect. He might even be an elder-level figure. Xian Jingtai would never be able to meet such an important person in his life. If he had not seen the clear sword heart technique once, he would not have been able to recognize it. There is actually an expert from the Tianjin sect behind Chu Fengyan. Could it be that the family Chu is related to the Tianjin sect? This family, Chu, has always been mysterious. But no matter what, I must have a good relationship with this kid. Xian Jingtai thought to himself. The Thousand Weapons Pavilion was inextricably linked to the Tianjin sect. Chapter 13. After Chu Fengyan left the Thousand Weapons Pavilion, he returned to the courtyard of the Lin Mansion. As soon as he entered the room, he collapsed on the bed, activating the sword intent. It seems like I haven't fully familiarized myself with this body. Chu Fengyan felt that his head was about to explode. This was the consequence of activating the sword intent by force. This body wasn't familiar with the sword intent. Although Chu Fengyan succeeded in activating the sword intent, his head was still in extreme pain. However, when he saw the azure light sword in his hand, Chu Fengyan felt that the pain had lessened by a lot. After a while, when Chu Fengyan's pain had weakened, he sat up and looked at the azure light sword with a smile on his face. This is a great bargain. Originally, Chu Fengyan went to the Thousand Weapons Pavilion to buy a light sword. However, when he saw Xian Jingtai's injuries, Chu Fengyan suddenly thought of using a disguise to obtain the azure light sword. It's a cultivation technique of the Tianjin sect. I still remember a thing or two about it. Chu Fengyan laughed in his heart. There were also cultivation techniques of the Tianjin sect in the collection of the Sword Dao Master. Chu Fengyan had seen it when he was bored. When he activated the sword intent, he deliberately released some of the cultivation techniques of the Tianjin sect. Sure enough, Xian Jingtai was intimidated. Chu Fengyan understood the principle of a tall tree attracting the wind. Because of this, Chu Fengyan deliberately pretended that there was an almighty existence behind him. Sure enough, Xian Jingtai was intimidated. 3 conditions. This Xian Jingtai is quite calculative. Chu Fengyan sneered in his heart. Chu Fengyan understood Xian Jingtai's actions just now. Xian Jingtai promised Chu Fengnian 3 conditions because he wanted to rely on Chu Fengnian to get close to the Almighty behind him. However, since Xian Jingtai took the initiative to come to his door, Chu Fengnian didn't reject him. A Divine Sea realm expert, or even a wind-controlling realm expert, was a favor that Chu Fengnian wanted. With Xian Jingtai's 3 favors, it wouldn't be easy for others to deal with Chu Fengnian in Martial Forest City. In terms of strength, Xian Jingtai could be ranked in the top 3 in Linwu City, not to mention that he was backed by the giant Tianjin sect. It was definitely not someone that the remote Linwu City dared to offend. This Xianqing sword is perfect for me. Chu Fengnian looked at the sword and muttered to himself. Chu Fengnian had only made this decision after much consideration. If he were to choose the heavy sword, Chu Fengnian's current strength was not enough. Chu Fengnian's strength was not enough to truly use the heavy sword to perform swordsmanship. After all, his body was still too thin and weak. As for the light sword, although it was not powerful enough, it allowed Chu Fengnian to display the swordsmanship that he was most confident in. When a sword art was cultivated to greater mastery, it wouldn't be difficult for one to fight above their level. In his previous life, Chu Fengnian's sword was unparalleled. In terms of swordsmanship, he had long been at the pinnacle. In his mind, there were almost all the supreme swordsmanship in the world. Chu Fengnian recalled the memories in his mind. With his current level, he couldn't display most of the swordsmanship. Suddenly, a shadow flashed across Chu Fengnian's mind. Unbounded Sword Dance. The Unbounded Sword Dance was a heaven-level medium-level sword art. In the entire victorious Wu country, it was absolutely unparalleled. However, the Unbounded Sword Dance wasn't a true sword art, but a sword dance. Its creator was a martialist who couldn't cultivate, just like Chu Fengnian. Although this person couldn't cultivate, his comprehension of swordsmanship was extremely high. In the end, he created the Unbounded Sword Dance. In the beginning, no one paid attention to the Unbounded Sword Dance. After all, a person who wasn't even a martialist couldn't create a sword art. Later on, in a battle between 2 elders of the Heavenly Sword sect, one of the female elders used the Unbounded Sword Dance and easily defeated the other elder. Only then did the reputation of the Unbounded Sword Dance spread. In terms of strength and sword will, the other elder was far superior to Elder Pu Han. However, it was because of the magic of the Unbounded Sword Dance that Elder Pu Han easily defeated the other elder. The Unbounded Sword Dance was enough to be called the #1 sword art for the weak to defeat the strong. The Unbounded Sword Dance didn't have high requirements for strength. However, it had extremely high requirements for sword will and swordsmanship. It perfectly met Chu Fengnian's requirements. The top 10 sword masters had also obtained the Unbounded Sword Dance. However, at that time, the sword master had already attained unparalleled sword will. The Unbounded Sword Dance didn't have much meaning for him. Chu Fengnian had also seen it by accident. Now he just remembered it. Chu Fengnian brought the Black Azure sword to the backyard that was covered with stone bricks. This backyard was also the place where Lin Mo and Lin Yi used to practice martial arts. Chu Fengnian held the Black Azure sword in his hand and poured spiritual energy into it. 3 strange inscriptions appeared on the body of the Black Azure sword. 3 inscriptions. The person who refined the Black Azure sword must have put in a lot of effort. For an ordinary profound level weapon, it was enough to carve 1 inscription. Even for a profound level top grade weapon, it would only have 2 inscriptions at most. This Black Azure sword was only a high-grade profound grade weapon. However, there were 3 inscriptions on it. It could only be said that the person who refined the Black Azure sword must have put in a lot of effort. Chu Fengnian poured his spiritual energy into the sword, and the 3 inscriptions appeared at the same time. 2 of the inscriptions were exactly the same. This made the Black Azure sword's blade much sharper. Chu Fengnian swung the sword at a stone tablet in the courtyard. Immediately, the stone tablet was cut in half. It was as smooth as flowing water. There was no delay. Sharp. Compared to a heavy sword, a light sword lacked strength and sharpness. Therefore, these 2 inscriptions were used to increase the sharpness of the sword. If spiritual energy was poured into the sword, its sharpness would not be inferior to a heavy sword of the same level. As for the other inscription, it was a light inscription. The reason why the Xianqing sword was so light was because of this inscription. It seemed that the person who refined the black azure sword wanted to refine it into an extremely light and sharp sword. A sword dance required a light and agile sword. Chu Fengmian held the black azure sword and jumped into the center of the courtyard. Chu Fengmian's body began to move. Chu Fengmian's speed did not seem to be fast, but there were already a few faint shadows. It was the phantom body technique. This was the phantom body technique's expression. At the same time, the black azure sword in Chu Fengmian's hand danced again and again. The sky was filled with swords. It was impossible to see which one was real and which one was fake. It seemed that Chu Fengmian was only performing a sword dance. However, in fact, an expert of the sword principle could see that each of Chu Fengmian's sword was filled with supreme sword intent. This was the real killing move. A move, a style, a sword, and a retraction. The black azure sword in Chu Fengmian's hand seemed to have become another arm of Chu Fengmian. Even a master of the sword principle could not be compared to Chu Fengmian in terms of comprehension of swordsmanship. Chu Fengmian was born for the sword principle. Under Chu Fengmian's performance, the infinite sword dance reached the great completion realm in an instant. However, Chu Fengmian was not satisfied. He continued to perform the black azure sword in his hand. 2 hours, 4 hours. Time passed by slowly. Chu Fengmian's body seemed to have merged with the sword in his hand. It was an extremely beautiful scene. The sky darkened and the sun rose. Chu Fengmian waited until the next day. At dawn, Chu Fengmian finally retrieved the black azure sword and put it back into the scabbard. This limitless sword dance had finally been cultivated to a perfect state. With the phantom body technique and the limitless sword dance, even though Chu Fengmian's cultivation level had yet to increase, Chu Fengmian believed that even if Li Xing, the number one person in the Lin Mansion's outer mansion, came, Chu Fengmian would be able to easily defeat him. Looking at the time, it's about time. Chapter 14. Chu Fengmian come out. Outside the courtyard, an angry roar was heard. Chu Fengmian turned around and saw a muscular middle-aged man dressed in silk. He was approaching Chu Fengmian step by step. At the same time, the muscular middle-aged man's body bulged. He looked at Chu Fengmian with murderous intent. Obviously, he did not come with good intentions. Li Mingyang, you're just an outer mansion servant. How dare you trespass into my courtyard? Chu Fengmian knew who this person was. His name was Li Mingyang, and he was the most loyal servant of the outer mansion's deputy housekeeper Li Xing. His strength was second only to Li Xing in the Lin Mansion's outer mansion, and he was at level 6 bone tempering stage. Chu Fengmian had long anticipated that Li Xing would seek revenge on Chu Fengmian for seizing Lin Mo and Lin Ye's courtyards. After all, Lin Mo and Lin Yi were Li Xing's subordinates. If Li Xing did not do anything, he would not have any authority in the Lin Mansion's outer mansion. It seemed like Li Mingyang was sent by Li Xing to test Chu Fengmian. What a joke, Chu Fengmian. Who do you think you are? In the Lin Mansion's outer mansion, we call you head steward because of the Lin Mansion. Don't try to show off. Li Mingyang looked at Chu Fengmian with a cold face and mocked him. Kid, you have to remember that in the Lin Mansion's outer mansion, if you're obedient, we'll call you head steward. But if you're not obedient, you're just a piece of trash. A piece of trash will never be able to turn the tables. Good. It seems like the outer mansion of the Lin Mansion is lawless. Every servant wants to go against the heavens. The corners of Chu Fengmian's mouth curled into a sneer. If it was in the past, he would not have dared to confront Li Mingyang. But now that he had mastered the boundless sword dance, he could even fight against a bone-tempering stage level 7 martial artist. Since Li Mingyang dared to come, he could be Chu Fengmian's guinea pig. You said I can't turn the tables? Today, I'll use you to establish my authority. I'll show that bastard Li Xing. In the Lin Mansion's outer mansion, I'll see who's the real head steward. Chu Fengmian's figure moved and suddenly rushed towards Li Mingyang. Little bastard, how dare you scold my master? Hearing Chu Fengmian's words, Li Mingyang roared crazily. Li Xing was the supreme master in Li Mingyang's heart. Now that he heard Chu Fengmian's words, he suddenly became crazy. Bone-crushing claw. Li Mingyang saw Chu Fengmian rushing over and suddenly attacked. His pair of sharp claws suddenly turned black, and his skin became extremely stiff. This bone-crushing claw was one of the most powerful martial techniques in the Lin Mansion Outer Mansion. Once mastered, one's hands would be harder than steel. Li Mingyang used his most vicious martial technique right from the start. However, Chu Fengmian's speed was much faster than he imagined. As his claw descended, Chu Fengmian's figure abruptly appeared beside him. His foot was already aimed at Li Mingyang's chest. Pong! Li Mingyang's huge body was directly kicked out and fell to the ground, spitting out blood. A level 6 bone-tempering stage martial artist dares to barge into my courtyard? Today, I'll cripple your cultivation. Let's see if you can barge into my courtyard. Chu Fengmian sneered and stomped towards Li Mingyang. Stop! Suddenly, a cold voice rang out. Outside the courtyard, a figure rushed into the courtyard. It seemed like he wanted to save Li Mingyang. Oomph! Seeing this figure, the corners of Chu Fengmian's mouth curled up into a sneer. His foot suddenly stomped on Li Mingyang's chest. Suddenly, Li Mingyang's ribs were crushed by Chu Fengmian's stomp. The 3 spiritual veins in his body were also shattered at the same time. Chu Fengmian, I told you to stop. Seeing that Chu Fengmian ignored him, the figure's voice became even more furious. Does Chu Fengmian need you to teach a servant a lesson? Li Xing. This voice belonged to the Lin Mansion's Outer Mansion's deputy housekeeper, Li Xing. It seemed like he had been standing outside the courtyard and observing everything that was happening. However, he did not expect Li Mingyang to be defeated so easily by Chu Fengmian. By the time he reacted, Chu Fengmian had already stomped on him. He had spent a lot of resources to nurture Li Mingyang. Otherwise, how could a servant of the Outer Mansion reach level 6 bone-tempering stage at such a young age? However, with Chu Fengmian's stomp, Li Mingyang was completely crippled. It was almost impossible for him to cultivate again. A servant who doesn't know the rules. Of course, I have to teach him a lesson. Chu Fengmian sneered and stomped on him again. Ah! Li Mingyang fell to the ground and let out a miserable cry. His left wrist was also crushed by Chu Fengmian's stomp. This stomp landed on Li Xing's face. Although it was Li Mingyang who was being stomped, the real target was Li Xing's face. Li Xing had always thought that he was the real number 1 in the Lin Mansion's Outer Mansion. However, today he was slapped in the face. Chu Fengmian, you. Li Xing finally rushed over. Looking at Li Mingyang, who was lying on the ground, his face was ferocious. A burst of anger erupted from his body. He looked at Chu Fengmian as if he could explode at any time. Looking at Li Xing's appearance, Chu Fengmian's expression was as calm as usual. Even if Li Xing was angry, he would not dare to make a move in the Lin Mansion. After all, Chu Fengmian was the chief steward of the Lin Mansion's Outer Mansion. Li Xing was only a deputy chief steward. In terms of status, Chu Fengmian was even higher than Li Xing. If Li Xing made a move, the Lin Mansion would not let him go even without Chu Fengmian's help. Previously, Lin Mo, Lin Yi, and the rest had bullied Chu Fengmian secretly. Now that everyone was watching, Li Xing would not dare to make a move. Deputy Chief Steward Li, what can I do for you? Chu Fengmian looked at Li Xing and said with a fake smile. Li Xing was extremely arrogant in the Lin Mansion's Outer Mansion. He did not even dare to take revenge when Chu Fengmian slapped his face. Was this the feeling of having power? Chu Fengmian thought. He had never had such a feeling when he was in the top 10. Now, he finally felt that he was a real person, a real cultivator. Even though he was extremely weak now, in the future, Chu Fengmian would definitely reach the top of the continent of the 9 clouds. Chapter 15. I wouldn't dare. However, I'm just here to remind you. Li Xing's expression changed drastically. However, he quickly regained his composure and spoke in a gloomy tone. Although head steward Chu has become a martial artist, you should think about it carefully. In front of the inner mansion of Lin Mansion, your strength is nothing but an ant. You're like a mayfly trying to shake a tree. Chu Fengmian knew what Li Xing meant. Although Chu Fengmian had become a martial artist and possessed strength, he was still nothing compared to the inner mansion of Lin Mansion. Li Xing, you don't have to beat around the bush. I know what happened all these years. Whether it's you or the person behind you, I'll settle the score with you one by one. Chu Fengmian said coldly. Although Li Xing's status was high, he wouldn't dare to go against Chu Fengmian like this. There was an even more powerful person behind Li Xing, and that was the young mansion master of Lin Mansion. Only he dared to go against Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian, have you really gone mad? Just based on a small character like you dare to think about dealing with young Master Lin? Li Xing laughed when he heard Chu Fengmian's words. In Li Xing's opinion, Chu Fengmian was able to become the head steward of the outer mansion of Lin Mansion because of Chu Fengmian's grandfather's kindness. As for Chu Fengmian himself, Li Xing didn't care at all. Li Xing was surprised that Chu Fengmian had recovered his spiritual pulse and became a martial artist. However, so what if he became a martial artist? An 18-year-old martial artist who had just stepped into the bone-tempering realm couldn't do anything. Chu Fengmian, I'm just here to remind you. Be a good cripple, and you'll be spared some physical pain. Otherwise, you'll be the one who suffers. Li Xing sneered. His words were full of threats. Head Steward Chu, you'd better stay in Lin Mansion for the next few days. Otherwise, it won't be good if you encounter any mishaps outside. Li Xing's eyes were filled with killing intent as he spoke. Chu Fengmian saw the killing intent clearly. It could be seen that Li Xing already had plans to take revenge on Chu Fengmian. As long as Chu Fengmian left the Lin Mansion, he would be able to take revenge on Chu Fengmian without any scruples. Li Xing, do you really think you are a match for me? Chu Fengmian looked at Li Xing with a playful expression. Chu Fengmian, what right do you have to be so arrogant here? Looking at Chu Fengmian's expression, Li Xing said angrily. He already hated Chu Fengmian to the core. If it wasn't for Chu Fengmian, he would have been the chief steward of the Lin Mansion. Although he could be considered as the #1 person in the outer mansion of the Lin Mansion, the title of deputy housekeeper had always been like a thorn in Li Xing's heart. He had wanted to remove it countless times. Now that he heard Chu Fengmian's words, Li Xing could no longer endure and angrily opened his mouth. If you have the ability, come with me to the life and death arena. We will know who is the #1 in the outer mansion of the Lin Mansion. Life and death arena. Li Xing wants Chu Fengmian to fight him on the life and death arena. The noise that came from the courtyard had attracted many disciples of the Lin Mansion to come and watch. In the face of the chief steward and the deputy housekeeper of the Lin Mansion, they were all extremely curious. They wanted to see who was the #1 in the outer mansion of the Lin Mansion. Although Chu Fengmian has condensed his spiritual meridians and become a martial artist, he has only condensed his spiritual meridians for a few months at most. Even if his progress is fast, it is impossible for him to fight with Li Xing. A Lin Mansion outer mansion disciple shook his head and said. They all knew about Chu Fengmian's talent, but if he were to fight with Li Xing, they did not believe that Chu Fengmian would win. After all, Li Xing was the #1 in the outer mansion of the Lin Mansion. He had held this position for 3 years, and no one could challenge him. Even if Chu Fengmian was talented, talent did not represent strength. Without time to prepare, Chu Fengmian would not be a match for Li Xing, not necessarily. After all, Chu Fengmian has just defeated Li Mingyang. Li Mingyang is a martial artist at Bone Tempering Stage Level 6. So what if he defeated Li Mingyang? Li Mingyang can't even take one move from Li Xing. Do you think Chu Fengmian will accept the challenge? If it were anyone else, Chu Fengmian would definitely not accept the challenge. But now it's hard to say. A Lin Mansion, outer mansion disciple laughed. In the past, Chu Fengmian was definitely not a good-for-nothing and was a symbol of weakness. However, in recent days, everyone noticed that Chu Fengmian had changed. Chu Fengmian was no longer the Chu Fengmian of the past. Life and death ring. Okay, I accept. Chu Fengmian's eyes moved as he said calmly. You accept? Chu Fengmian's answer surprised Li Xing. However, his expression soon became ferocious. Good. Chu Fengmian, you are really arrogant. However, I would like to see how arrogant you can be in the life and death ring later. Let's meet in the life and death ring in 2 hours. Li Xing laughed sinisterly and walked out of the courtyard. Since Chu Fengmian had said he would accept the challenge in front of so many people, there was no possibility for him to go back on his words. Almost at the same time, The news of Chu Fengyan and Li Xing entering the Life and Death Ring spread throughout the Lin Mansion. The Life and Death Ring was located on the west side of the Lin Mansion's inner mansion. It was a copper platform that was 100 meters tall. There were countless iron spikes around the copper platform. If anyone fell from it, even a level 9 bone-tempering stage martial artist would die without a doubt. There was a spectator stand around the copper platform. In the past, there were almost no people around the spectator stand. However, it was packed with people today. Not only the Lin Mansion Outer Mansion disciples, but there were also many Lin Mansion Inner Mansion disciples who came to the spectator stand to wait. Chu Fengyan and Li Xing. These two names were well known in the Inner Mansion, especially Li Xing. His strength was not below that of an ordinary Inner Mansion disciple. He was only assigned to the Outer Mansion of a Lin Mansion because of the position of the Outer Mansion housekeeper. In fact, no one regarded him as an Outer Mansion disciple. Chu Fengyan is here. Looking at the figure walking over from afar, voices came from the spectator stand. Is there something wrong with Chu Fengyan's brain? How dare he accept Li Xing's challenge in the Life and Death Ring? Maybe he thinks he has some strength and doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Chapter 16. It seems like I'm not popular here. Hearing those words, Chu Fengyan smiled bitterly. In the Lin Mansion, there was no one who supported Chu Fengyan. They wanted him to win. There was only one reason why the disciples of the Lin Mansion were against Chu Fengyan. They were jealous. They were jealous of Chu Fengyan's background. They were jealous that Chu Fengyan, a trash who was not even a martial artist, could become the chief steward of the Lin Mansion's Outer Mansion. Because of this, they were more or less hostile towards Chu Fengyan. Fengyan, why did you agree to Li Xing's challenge? An old man suddenly ran over from the Life and Death Ring. He looked at Chu Fengyan with a worried expression. I heard that your strength has improved. However, Li Xing is at bone-tempering realm level 7. He's 2 levels higher than you. You have no chance of winning against him. It's better that you don't go to the Life and Death Ring this time. If you really want to deal with Li Xing, wait a few years until your strength has improved. It won't be too late to deal with him then. Come with me to apologize to the Mansion Master later. Say that it was a slip of the tongue. You can't go to the Life and Death Ring. Although the old man sounded anxious, Chu Fengyan could still hear the concern in his voice. Uncle Lin, I said it myself. There's no reason for me to take it back. Chu Fengyan looked at the old man and said softly. Besides, I'm not necessarily afraid of Li Xing. The old man in front of him was the Lin Mansion's 3rd elder. He was the only one in the Lin Mansion who treated Chu Fengyan well. The 3rd elder was a good friend of Chu Fengyan's grandfather. Chu Fengyan could become the chief steward of the Lin Mansion's Outer Mansion because of the 3rd elder's words. Although the 3rd elder's words were tough, the concern in his voice warmed Chu Fengyan's heart. It was the first time other than his master and senior brother that cared about him. Uncle Lin, don't worry. Since I've agreed to it, I won't be afraid of Li Xing, Chu Fengyan said indifferently. The confidence in his voice made the 3rd elder look at Chu Fengyan in surprise. Since when did the weak and lowly Chu Fengyan become so confident? Although the 3rd elder had heard rumors about Chu Fengyan, he was still shocked when he saw it with his own eyes. Good. Feng Mian, you are indeed worthy of being the descendant of the family Chu. You are Senior Chu's grandson. 3rd elder glanced at Chu Fengyan a few times, but still didn't stop him. He stood to the side and watched Chu Fengyan walk toward the Life and Death platform. I thought you didn't dare to come. On the Life and Death arena, Li Xing was already standing there. Seeing Chu Fengyan slowly walking over, he revealed a sinister smile. Usually, you hide in the Lin Mansion, and I don't have a chance to do so. Since you want to die today, I will fulfill your wish. Cut the crap. Sign it. Chu Fengyan glanced at Li Xing and said coldly. There was no point in arguing for a moment. Good. It seems like you really want to die quickly. Li Xing said furiously. Sign a Life and Death contract. This is a Life and Death contract. Once you sign it, your life and death will be decided by the heavens. Only one person can leave the Life and Death arena. Do you all understand? An elder from the Lin Mansion said coldly. This elder was the enforcement elder of the Lin Mansion. He had always been the one in charge of the life and death arena. As his voice sounded, two talismans appeared in front of the two. These talismans contained spiritual energy that recorded everything that happened. Good. Chu Fengmian didn't hesitate. He waved his hand and signed his name. On the other side, Li Xing saw this and signed his name at almost the same time. The moment he signed his name, several silver needles suddenly shot out from Li Xing's hand. They flew towards Chu Fengmian. These silver needles were extremely fast. There was a layer of green spiritual energy on top of them. They were strengthened by Li Xing's spiritual energy. Soul's silver needles. Despicable. How could he use such a sinister method? Seeing the sudden appearance of the silver needles, some of the Lin Mansion disciples in the spectator stand couldn't help but exclaim. Li Xing's strength is above Chu Fengmian. Now, he is using the soul silver needles to launch a sneak attack. When Li Xing was waiting on the life and death arena, he had secretly hidden the silver needles in his hand. The moment he signed his name, he suddenly shot them out. No one expected Li Xing to use such a despicable method. Fengmian, the third elder's face changed drastically. These soul silver needles weren't ordinary items. They were middle-grade yellow-class spiritual weapons. Once they were pierced, no one in the bone-tempering realm would be able to withstand them. Elder of law enforcement, isn't this a little too despicable? This Li Xing had already prepared a scheme before he started. The third elder couldn't help but say. He moved his body and wanted to rush towards the life and death arena. Why you say that, third elder? Once the life and death arena is signed, life and death are up to fate. If Chu Fengmian didn't prepare, how can he blame Li Xing for preparing? Another old man said with a cold smile on his face. This elder was the fifth elder of the Lin Mansion. He was also the head of the Li family and Li Xing's grandfather. In my opinion, this can only be attributed to Chu Fengmian's stupidity. If he didn't prepare for the life and death arena, he deserves to die. Once they enter the life and death arena, it's between the two of them. Outsiders are not allowed to interfere. Third elder, you should just watch quietly. Although the fifth elder's tone was calm, everyone could hear the pride in his voice. The enforcement elder nodded his head slightly when he heard the fifth elder's words. Although Li Xing's actions weren't righteous, it was a life and death arena. What were these tricks? To a martial artist, as long as they could win, all tricks were nothing. On the life and death arena, the soul silver needles were about to reach Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian, I know that you've practiced a movement technique and are difficult to deal with. However, I'd like to see if your movement technique or my soul silver needles are faster. Li Xing laughed. From the beginning, he wasn't prepared to fight with Chu Fengmian. Even if he was confident in his own strength, he was still wary of Chu Fengmian's phantom movement technique. Now, he planned to use the soul silver needles to kill Chu Fengmian. The soul silver needles contained a type of paralyzing poison. As long as it pierced into the body, it would paralyze the body. At that time, the victim would be at the mercy of others. Do you think that these puny soul silver needles can deal with me? Suddenly, Chu Fengmian's eyes changed. Almost all the Lin Mansion disciples didn't expect Chu Fengmian to be so serious. Chapter 17. The sword radiance flashed by almost in an instant. The 7 soul silver needles that Li Xing shot out fell to the ground at the same time and broke into 2. What kind of sword skill is this? It's so terrifying that it can break the soul silver needles. The crowd started to whisper among themselves. The soul silver needles could travel 100 meters in a second after being shot out. It was difficult for ordinary bone-tempering realm spiritual masters to dodge, let alone break them with a sword. This level of swordsmanship was simply shocking. Even some sword cultivator experts might not be able to sever the soul silver needle. Everyone present was a martial artist, so they naturally knew how difficult it was. A young man standing at the side was also stunned. His face turned ugly. Damn it, how could this little bastard have such terrifying sword skill? Could it be that the old man taught him this? The young man roared in a low voice. Although his voice was low, it still frightened the people around him. Young Mansion Master, don't worry. Li Xing's strength is above Chu Fengmian's. Chu Fengmian will definitely die today. A Lin Mansion disciple at the side hurriedly tried to appease him. "Get lost," the young man roared. His words were the wrong way to flatter Li Xing. Now that Chu Fengmian had displayed such sword skill, even if Li Xing's strength was higher than Chu Fengmian's, it was impossible for him to be Chu Fengmian's opponent. After all, this sword skill was too terrifying. Even two realms couldn't suppress it. Unless Li Xing went all out, he wouldn't stand a chance. "No, I can't let this little bastard live on," the young man thought viciously in his heart. Chu Fengmian had only become a martial artist for a few days. Even if Chu Fengmian had hidden his strength, it wouldn't have been long. In such a short time, Chu Fengmian's sword skill had reached such a terrifying level. If Chu Fengmian continued to grow, he would definitely be a terrifying genius. By then, it would be hard to say who would be the young mansion master of Lin Mansion. One should know that Chu Fengmian's grandfather was the previous mansion master of Lin Mansion. If Chu Fengmian really grew, there would definitely be people in Lin Mansion who would choose to support Chu Fengmian. I thought this little bastard was trash. I didn't expect that I was wrong. Fortunately, he hasn't grown. I'll have a chance to kill him sooner or later. The young man thought to himself viciously as he turned his gaze to the life and death ring. The moment he saw the soul silver needle being broken, Li Xing's face instantly turned pale. He originally thought that if he used the soul silver needles to sneak an attack on Chu Fengmian, even if Chu Fengmian was lucky enough to block it, he would at least be pierced by a few needles. When the soul silver needles acted up, Chu Fengmian would be at his mercy. But now, Chu Fengmian had suddenly attacked and severed all the soul silver needles. Even if he was not a sword cultivator, he could understand how difficult it was to achieve such a sword technique. Li Xing's heart was filled with fear as he watched Chu Fengmian approach him step by step. How could he have the courage to fight against such a sword technique? "Chu Fengmian, I admit defeat," Li Xing suddenly said while panting heavily. "How about I admit defeat this time? From now on, the position of number one in the outer palace belongs to you." Li Xing's words caused an uproar among the crowd. He admitted defeat. Li Xing was the number one among the younger generation in the outer mansion of the Lin Mansion. In terms of strength, he was considered to be above average in the inner mansion. But now, he had chosen to admit defeat. However, no one was surprised by this decision. The sword technique that Chu Fengmian had displayed was too terrifying. If Li Xing did not admit defeat, only death awaited him. However, if he wanted to admit defeat on the life and death ring, it would depend on whether Chu Fengmian would accept it or not. After all, after entering the life and death ring and signing the life and death contract, one's life was no longer his own. It belonged to the winner. You want to admit defeat? The corner of Chu Fengmian's mouth curled into a cold sneer. Li Xing had used the soul silver needles to launch a sneak attack. If Chu Fengmian had not practiced the infinite sword dance and the sword technique from his previous life, the soul silver needles would have hit Chu Fengmian's body without any suspense. At that time, Chu Fengmian did not believe that Li Xing would let him live. If he wanted to admit defeat now, there would be no benefit for him. Chu Fengmian, do not accept it," Chu Fengmian said coldly. At the same time, his body suddenly moved and closed in on Li Xing. "Chu Fengmian, are you crazy? Do you really want to fight to the death? If I die on this ring today, you won't be able to live either." Li Xing threatened angrily when he heard Chu Fengmian's words. "I'm a member of the Li family. If you dare to kill me, the Li family will not let you go." "So what if you're from the Li family? Do you think I'm afraid of the Li family? Moreover, we've entered the life and death ring and signed the life and death contract," Chu Fengmian said coldly. In the past, Chu Fengmian had always compromised. In the end, he was humiliated in the Lin Mansion. This time, Chu Fengmian would never compromise. Chu Fengmian would never listen to threats. "Die!" Chu Fengmian's eyes turned cold. The black azure sword in his hand suddenly fell and slashed at Li Xing. After all, Li Xing was a martial artist at the 7th level of the bone-tempering realm. At the moment of life and death, he reacted instantly. His body hurriedly rushed to the side and dodged Chu Fengmian's fatal strike. However, his right arm was neatly chopped off. A miserable shriek sounded from the life and death ring. "Xinger!" On the spectator's stand, the fifth elder roared. He finally couldn't hold it in anymore. Li Xing was the one he valued the most among his grandsons. Otherwise, he wouldn't have sent Li Xing to the Outer Mansion and wanted him to be the Outer Mansion's chief steward. Now that he saw Chu Fengyan chopping off his arm, the fifth elder's hair stood on end due to anger. The fifth elder rushed to the life and death ring and stood in front of Li Xing. His eyes were filled with killing intent as he stared at Chu Fengyan. If this wasn't the life and death ring, the fifth elder would have killed Chu Fengyan with a single blow. Brat, Li Xing has already admitted defeat. Why do you still want to kill him? Admit defeat? Only one person can survive on the life and death ring. Fifth elder, don't you know this rule? Facing the fifth elder's monstrous killing intent, Chu Fengyan's face was as calm as ever. He wasn't affected at all. In his previous life, Chu Fengyan had received countless threats. Even when he was threatened by the experts from the 7 major sects, Chu Fengyan's expression didn't change. This insignificant fifth elder was nothing to him. Moreover, Li Xing launched a sneak attack just now. He didn't intend to let me go. Does the fifth elder want to break the rules now? Interfere with the life and death ring? Chapter 18. Fifth elder, please come back. No one is allowed to disturb the life and death ring. The enforcement elder said calmly. No one is allowed to break the rules of the life and death ring. Hearing the enforcement elder's words, the fifth elder glanced at Li Xing and returned to the spectator, stand silently. Challenging the rules of the life and death ring. The fifth elder did not dare to do so. The life and death ring had existed since the establishment of the Lin Mansion. The rules had not changed for thousands of years. No one dared to challenge it, not even the master of the Lin Mansion, let alone the fifth elder. He could only return to the spectator, stand obediently. Chu Fengyan, if you let Xinger go today, I promise you that I'll give you a huge fortune. How about that? The fifth elder looked at Chu Fengyan and said, but if you dare to kill Xing, I Li Fu promise. I'll definitely kill you. I won't rest until you're dead. The fifth elder was no longer trying to hide the blatant threat in his words. Is that so? As soon as the fifth elder finished his words, Chu Fengyan's sword had already landed. Li Xing's throat was pierced by the sword. What? The fifth elder was almost pricked by the needle. His figure rushed to the life and death ring with a loud bang. A stream of spiritual energy was injected into Li Xing's body, but this stream of spiritual energy was like a stone thrown into the sea, and there was no reaction at all. Dead. Li Xing had been killed by the sword. There was no sign of life left. The fifth elder, who had lowered his head to check on Li Xing's body, suddenly raised his head. A surge of spiritual energy gathered on his right palm and turned into a ferocious tiger. He charged at Chu Fengyan. Little bastard, I want you dead. Fengyan. Almost at the same time, a figure suddenly appeared in front of Chu Fengyan. This figure blocked the fifth elder's palm as soon as he made his move. Lin Yan, you old man, how dare you go against me? The fifth elder pointed at Chu Fengyan and shouted angrily as he looked at the third elder standing in front of Chu Fengyan. This little bastard doesn't care about the Lin Mansion. He'll kill my grandson next time. How can I let such a person leave? Get lost. Today, I will kill this little bastard and avenge my grandson. Fifth elder, this is the life and death arena. Li Xing was the one who initiated the sneak attack. What's the matter? If he dies because of his lack of skill, does fifth elder still want to stand up for him? Chu Fengyan looked at the fifth elder and sneered. This was the life and death ring. In front of so many elders of the Lin Mansion, Chu Fengyan was not afraid that the fifth elder would dare to deal with him. You. Hearing Chu Fengyan's words, the fifth elder was extremely furious in his heart, but he had nothing to say. His face was completely red. Indeed, everyone knew that it was Li Xing who took the initiative to challenge Chu Fengyan on the life and death arena. The two already owed each other a life and death contract. On the life and death arena, life and death were up to fate. This was a long-standing rule. Moreover, it was Li Xing who had taken the initiative to launch a sneak attack on Chu Fengyan in an attempt to kill him. Now that Li Xing had died in Chu Fengyan's hands, it was merely retribution. Chu Fengyan, you're just a junior. How can you talk to your elders like that? Moreover, this is the fifth elder. A fat old man on the spectator stand suddenly spoke. This fat old man was the fourth elder of the Lin mansion. In the past, he had a good relationship with the fifth elder. Now that he saw Li Xing being killed, his face turned extremely ugly. Although this is the life and death ring, you and Li Xing are still members of the Lin mansion. It's always wrong for you to kill your fellow disciple. Apologize to the fifth elder immediately. At the same time, give him a year's salary and go to the ash mine to mine for a year as punishment. Hearing the fourth elder's words, Chu Fengmian laughed out loud. Ha ha! Fourth elder, although I'm a junior, I'm also the chief steward of the Lin mansion's outer mansion. In the Lin mansion, the outer mansion and the inner mansion are of the same level. You have no right to order me around. Chu Fengmian said indifferently. There was a hint of mockery in his eyes as he looked at the fourth elder, which made the fourth elder choke on his words. Moreover, Li Xing died on the life and death ring. Don't tell me that Li Xing survived and caused me to die on the life and death ring? Chu Fengmian said casually. His words showed that he did not put the fourth elder in his eyes. This caused the fourth elder's face to tremble in anger. As the fourth elder of the Lin mansion, not to mention the Lin mansion, even in the entire martial Linlin city, no one dared to speak to him in such a manner. Everyone who saw him was respectful. Now, a junior like Chu Fengmian, who was like a piece of trash in his eyes, actually dared to speak to him in such a manner. The layers of fat on his body began to tremble because of his anger. Arrogant junior. How arrogant. How disrespectful. Chu Fengmian killed his fellow disciple. He doesn't deserve to be the chief steward of the Lin mansion's outer mansion. The fourth elder roared furiously. He looked at the middle-aged man who was the tallest on the viewing platform and said respectfully, Mansion Master, I beg you to remove Chu Fengmian from his position as the chief steward of the outer mansion. Such a heartless person has no right to be the chief steward of the Lin mansion's outer mansion. That's right. Mansion Master, remove this brat. The fifth elder roared furiously. He had lost his grandson, but he couldn't kill Chu Fengmian to avenge Li Xing. If Chu Fengmian really lost his position as the chief steward of the Lin mansion, he would become a ball of dough that the fifth elder could pinch to his heart's content. Mansion Master, Chu Fengmian's position was personally determined by the previous mansion master. The third elder said anxiously from the side. He didn't expect Chu Fengmian to not give the fifth elder any face and kill Li Xing in front of him. But now, he could only speak up for Chu Fengmian. The previous mansion master? We've already repaid the favor by raising this trash for so many years. Are we really going to let this brat ride on our heads? The fifth elder roared. Silence. In the midst of the quarrel, the middle-aged man who was sitting at the highest position finally spoke. His words caused the entire place to fall silent. Although the fourth elder and the fifth elder were arrogant and despotic, they didn't dare to make any noise in front of the Lin mansion master. The Lin mansion master said coldly. Chu Fengmian's position was personally determined by the previous mansion master. The previous mansion master has done a great favor for the Lin mansion. The position of the chief steward of the outer mansion belongs to him. The Lin mansion master turned to look at Chu Fengmian and said, However, Chu Fengmian has crossed the line. How about this? Chu Fengmian apologized to the fifth elder, and this matter will be considered over. This matter would be considered over if Chu Fengmian apologized. Everyone present could tell that the mansion master was giving Chu Fengmian and the fifth elder a way out. Even if Li Xing died in the life and death ring, he was still a member of the Li family and the beloved grandson of the fifth elder. Chapter 19. The spectator's stand was silent. Everyone was looking at Chu Fengmian on the life and death ring. They all wanted to see if Chu Fengmian, who was incomparably arrogant and didn't put the two elders in his eyes, would apologize. Fengmian apologized for the time being. Now is not the time to clash with the fifth elder. You're still too weak. The third elder said to Chu Fengmian softly. He was overjoyed after hearing the Lin mansion master's words. If Chu Fengmian apologized now, the fifth elder wouldn't have a good reason to avenge Li Xing in the future. Uncle Lin, you don't have to say any more. The third elder saw Chu Fengmian's cold expression and wanted to say more. However, he was stopped by Chu Fengmian's words. Chu Fengmian raised his head and looked at the middle-aged man at the top of the spectator stand. I won't apologize. These 5 words were like 5 claps of thunder that resounded in everyone's heart. Arrogant. He's too arrogant. He's not arrogant anymore. He's a lunatic, a mad dog. Everyone was thinking in their hearts. However, many of the Lin Mansion disciples were looking at Chu Fengmian with admiration in their eyes. Since the establishment of the Lin Mansion, no one had dared to go against the Lin Mansion master's orders. Chu Fengmian's answer was to reject the Lin Mansion master's orders. Chu Fengmian, the third elder, was so anxious that he wanted to die. He hadn't thought that there would be such a ready-made way out of this situation. As long as Chu Fengmian took a step back, he could go down. But now, this sentence pushed Chu Fengmian into the teeth of the storm. Shut up. What an arrogant man. Mansion Master, this brat is too arrogant. He doesn't even listen to your orders. We can't let such an arrogant person live. Chase him out of the Lin Mansion. No, cripple his cultivation. Demote him to a slave and send him to the ash mine. Almost at the same time, countless voices were heard. It wasn't just the 4th elder and the 5th elder. Even the 2nd elder and the enforcement elder were criticizing Chu Fengmian. In the Lin Mansion, Chu Fengmian's existence had always been a thorn in their side. Now that they had seized the opportunity, all of them began to shout crazily. Now that things have come to this, all of you don't have to pretend anymore. Chu Fengmian looked at the roaring crowd and sneered. The position of chief housekeeper of the Lin Mansion belongs to family Chu. It has nothing to do with the Lin Mansion. If I want to leave, I will leave. There is no need for you to chase me away. 5th elder, don't you want to avenge Li Xing? How about I give you a chance? Chu Fengmian turned his head and looked at the 5th elder. 3 months from now, how about we go to the life and death arena? Onto the life and death arena. 3 months later, Chu Fengmian was about to enter the life and death arena again. This time, Chu Fengmian's target was the 5th elder. It's over. This kid is crazy. Going to the life and death arena with the 5th elder? The 5th elder is someone at the body refining realm. Is Chu Fengmian planning to commit suicide? I think Chu Fengmian's brain must have been damaged from all the training. 3 months? Even if he was given 3 years, he wouldn't be a match for the 5th elder. Everyone thought in their hearts. Everyone looked at Chu Fengmian as if they were looking at a dead man. Chu Fengmian was only at the 5th level of the bone-tempering realm. Even if he could defeat Li Xing, who was at the 7th level of the bone-tempering realm, it was impossible for him to defeat the 5th elder, who was at the body-refining realm. One had to know that these were 2 completely different realms. Even a martial artist at the peak of the bone-tempering realm would not be a match for a martial artist who had just stepped into the 1st level of the body-refining realm. Could it be that Chu Fengmian was confident that he could reach the body-refining realm in 3 months? Fengmian, what are you saying? The 3rd elder wanted to speak, but when he saw the confidence in Chu Fengmian's eyes, he did not continue speaking. He already understood that the current Chu Fengmian was completely different from the Chu Fengmian he had imagined. Chu Fengmian was confident that he could defeat Li Xing. What he said now was not empty words. What an arrogant kid. Little bastard, it seems like you're courting death. The elders also started to laugh out loud. Even a peerless genius with all 7 spiritual meridians would not be able to step into the body refining realm in 3 months. Even the number 1 genius in the history of the Lin Mansion took a year to reach the body refining realm from the 5th level of the bone-tempering realm. It was impossible to achieve all this in 3 months. All right, then I'll give you 3 months' time. You'll die in 3 months. The 5th elder said coldly, his voice filled with killing intent. 3 months was not long, and he could afford to wait. More importantly, he knew that Chu Fengmian would not be able to defeat him in 3 months. Chu Fengmian, are you sure about the life and death ring in 3 months? The Lin Mansion master looked at Chu Fengmian. His eyes were deep, and no one knew what he was thinking. That's right. Chu Fengmian nodded. The Lin Mansion master said coldly, all right, we'll settle this in the life and death ring in 3 months. No matter who wins or loses, we'll write off this debt. After speaking, the Lin Mansion master left. The few elders also left one after another. The crisis this time was temporarily resolved. However, everyone knew that this matter was only temporarily suppressed. 3 months later, it would truly erupt. The Lin Mansion disciples also left one after another. After an hour, Chu Fengmian and the third elder returned to the courtyard of the Lin Mansion. Fengmian, are you really confident that you could defeat Li Fu in 3 months? The third elder asked Chu Fengmian as soon as he entered. Although Li Fu's strength is ranked last among the Lin Mansion elders, he's still at the third level of the body refining realm. It's impossible for anyone who hasn't stepped into the body refining realm to be his opponent. The fifth elder was not an elder of the Lin Mansion who specialized in combat. However, to become an elder of the Lin Mansion, one had to be at least at the body refining realm. Even if the fifth elder was old, he was still not someone a bone-tempering realm martial artist could defeat. I'm confident that I can step into the body refining realm in 3 months, Chu Fengmian said resolutely. To step into the body refining realm from the 5th level of the bone-tempering realm in 3 months, even in the entire Wusheng country, this was almost impossible. However, it did not mean that Chu Fengmian could not do it. Chu Fengmian had countless experiences from his previous life, and he also had the world's most mysterious cultivation technique, the Broken Bones Rebirth Technique. He could go from a trash without spiritual veins to opening up 3 spiritual veins and step into the 5th level of the bone-tempering realm in 2 days. Chapter 20. Wanting to step into the body refinement realm from the 5th level of the bone-tempering realm in 3 months was absolutely a fantasy. But now, hearing it from Chu Fengmian's mouth, the third elder actually believed it somewhat. The third elder didn't believe that Chu Fengmian could defeat Li Xing during the battle between Chu Fengmian and Li Xing. But in fact, Li Xing couldn't even resist Chu Fengmian. He was killed by Chu Fengmian. Therefore, the third elder believed Chu Fengmian's words, even if it was impossible. Fengmian, it seems like you've grown up. Family Chu is no trash. All right, since you said it, I'll believe you. The third elder laughed. His laughter was indescribably carefree. Previously, Chu Fengmian was a good-for-nothing who was constantly being targeted by others. The third elder's heart was also extremely depressed. Now that Chu Fengmian had risen, he was happy. The third elder said, "If you need anything in these 3 months, just let me know. I plan to leave the Lin Mansion in these 3 months." Chu Fengmian said. He had already made up his mind. It was a challenge to reach the body refinement realm in 3 months. Chu Fengmian didn't have the confidence to break through if he stayed in the Lin Mansion. After all, for a warrior, every breakthrough had to be accompanied by danger. Only in danger could one improve faster. It was too safe to stay in the Lin Mansion. Leave the Lin Mansion, the third elder frowned. If Chu Fengmian stayed in the Lin Mansion, the 4th elder and the 5th elder wouldn't dare to attack him even if they hated him. After all, the life and death ring was decided in front of the Lin Mansion master. No one dared to attack Chu Fengmian in the Lin Mansion. However, if Chu Fengmian left the Lin Mansion, it would be a different story. No matter how powerful the Lin Mansion was, there would be places they couldn't see. It was possible that the 4th elder and the 5th elder wouldn't wait for 3 months and would send someone to kill Chu Fengmian. The third elder frowned. Do you know that there will be danger if you leave the Lin Mansion? Of course I know. How can I not experience danger if I want to become an expert? Chu Fengmian said indifferently. Experts were born after experiencing countless dangers and countless battles of life and death. If Chu Fengmian continued to stay in the Lin Mansion, even though it would be safe, what use would it be? Chu Fengmian did not reincarnate just for a moment of peace. That's right. He will never be able to grow in the Lin Mansion. The third elder nodded. He had no intention of stopping Chu Fengmian. 3 months later, I hope you can return safely. As he spoke, third elder suddenly took out a jade bottle from his bosom and handed it to Chu Fengmian. This is the only thing Uncle Lin can do for you now. Chu Fengmian had just received the jade bottle when the third elder hurriedly left. This jade bottle. As Chu Fengmian opened the jade bottle, a fragrant scent assaulted his nostrils. Within the jade bottle was a green elixir that contained extremely pure spiritual energy. Jade Dew Pill, profound grade pill. Chu Fengmian's heart warmed at the sight of the green pill. The third elder hurriedly left because he was afraid that Chu Fengmian would not accept the Jade Dew Pill. The Jade Dew Pill was a profound middle grade elixir. It was extremely useful for body refining realm warriors. The third elder probably had to spend several years to exchange for this Jade Dew Pill. 3 months later, I will definitely step into the body refining realm and return to the Lin Mansion, Chu Fengmian said in his heart. He put away the Jade Dew Pill and left the Lin Mansion with the profound azure sword without looking back. Another one. In a dense forest in the mountain range, a young figure was frantically traversing through the forest. Behind the young figure, a 3 to 4 meter tall giant hornbull was chasing after the young figure. Phantom. Just as the giant hornbull was about to catch up, the young figure moved and suddenly split into 3 figures. The giant hornbull was stunned for a moment. Sword. Seizing the opportunity, a sword suddenly descended from the sky and pierced the giant horned bull's body. The giant horned bull fell to the ground, and fresh blood flowed along the edge of the sword. I killed another green-skinned iron bull. This one should have reached the 7th level of the bone-tempering realm. The young man looked at the corpse of the green-skinned iron bull and muttered to himself. He cut open the head of the green-skinned iron bull and took out a green monster pill the size of a longan fruit. This young man was Chu Fengmian. It had been 10 days since Chu Fengmian arrived at the barbaric mountain range. In these 10 days, Chu Fengmian had been killing day and night in the barbaric mountain range. He had already lost count of how many demonic beasts he had killed. The barbaric mountain range was the largest mountain range near the martial Lin city. It was densely covered with forests. This was not the territory of humans, but the territory of countless demonic beasts. Countless demonic beasts lived here. These demonic beasts had huge bodies and could cultivate. When they activated their power, their strength was 10 times stronger than humans of the same level. Chu Fengmian had just arrived at the barbaric mountain range when he encountered a 6th level bone-tempering realm green goat. Chu Fengmian fought with the green goat for a full 2 hours before successfully killing it. However, the longer Chu Fengmian stayed in the barbaric mountain range, the more he understood the demonic beasts' weaknesses. These demonic beasts were powerful, and their bodies were incomparably tough. They far surpassed human warriors in terms of strength. However, they had a fatal weakness. These demonic beasts were not very intelligent, so they could be easily killed by certain means. However, this was only for low-level demonic beasts. The truly high-level demonic beasts had intelligence that surpassed humans. At the same time, their strength was 100 times stronger than human warriors. These were the truly terrifying demonic beasts. In his previous life, Chu Fengmian knew that some truly powerful demonic beasts had even imitated humans and established empires. They were no different from humans. Between warriors and demonic beasts, there was a natural antagonistic relationship. Demonic beasts could devour human bodies to increase their strength. On the other hand, warriors could use demonic beast bodies to refine armors and use monster pills to refine elixirs. Both sides had always been at odds with each other. Chu Fengmian took out the green-skinned Iron Bull's monster pill and put it into a snakeskin bag. This snakeskin bag was already filled with 1/3 of the various monster pills. Chapter 21. Chu Fengmian chose to come to the barbaric mountains for 2 reasons. First, he wanted to experience a life-and-death battle. He wanted to use every battle to break through. Second, he wanted to use this opportunity to hone his swordsmanship and accumulate experience. Although Chu Fengmian's swordsmanship was amazing and his understanding of swordsmanship was high, it was all talk on paper. In his previous life, Chu Fengmian did not even have spiritual power. How could he have any combat experience? In these 10 days, Chu Fengmian's cultivation level did not change at all. However, in terms of strength, it was enough to say that he had made rapid progress. At least, Chu Fengmian could now easily defeat a level 8 bone-tempering realm beast. If it were a martial artist, Even a level 9 bone-tempering realm martial artist would not be Chu Fengmian's match. Chu Fengmian was confident that he could defeat a level 9 bone-tempering realm martial artist in 3 moves. Most of the level 8 bone-tempering realm beasts around here have been killed. It seems that I have to go deeper. Chu Fengmian looked around, picked up the black azure sword, and continued to walk deeper into the barbaric mountains. The deeper he went into the barbaric mountains, the stronger the beasts. It was said that there were even-body, refining realm and spirit sea realm beasts. Chu Fengmian would definitely die if he encountered them. However, these powerful beasts were in the deepest part of the barbaric mountains. It was unlikely that they would appear at the edge of the barbaric mountains. Chu Fengmian cautiously walked through the forest. Every step he took was silent and did not make the slightest sound. This was the mystical aspect of the phantom body technique. A high-level body technique was not only useful when it was activated, but it would also have an effect on the user's every move. For example, Chu Fengmian was now moving through the forest without making a sound. He was relying on the phantom body technique's magic. In this way, it would be difficult to alert high-level beasts. There are traces of beasts nearby. Chu Fengmian gradually stopped. Chu Fengmian could vaguely sense the traces of beasts nearby. The smell of blood. Chu Fengmian sniffed. The smell of blood came from not far away. Let's go take a look. Chu Fengmian made up his mind and quietly approached. Not far ahead, there was a huge rhinoceros carcass that was 5 to 6 meters long. It was bleeding profusely. Beside the carcass, there were more than 10 red figures gnawing on the carcass. 2-horned rhinoceros? Chu Fengmian was a little surprised to see the corpse of the giant rhinoceros. This 2-legged rhinoceros was a 9th-level bone-tempering stage demonic beast. Its brute force was frighteningly strong. It was almost invincible in the same realm, but now it had been killed. How could there be such a terrifying demonic beast in the outskirts of the wildlands that could do such a thing? While Chu Fengmian was surprised, he shifted his gaze to the dozen or so red figures. The dozen or so red figures weren't big, the longest being no more than 2 meters long. Their bodies were covered with thick hair, and the bright red color was frightening. Bloodthirsty demon wolf. Chu Fengmian muttered to himself. No wonder this double-horned rhinoceros was hunted down. This bloodthirsty fiend wolf was only a demonic beast at the 8th level of the bone-tempering stage. However, bloodthirsty fiend wolves usually lived in packs. A pack would have at least a few members, and at most a dozen members. This was especially true when the bloodthirsty fiend wolves attacked their enemies in a frenzy. With more than 10 bloodthirsty fiend wolves surrounding them, even the twin-horned rhinoceros could only be hunted to death. This pack of bloodthirsty fiend wolves is just right for me to practice my swordsmanship. The bloodthirsty fiend wolves were incomparably ferocious when facing their enemies. Especially when more than 10 bloodthirsty fiend wolves attacked together. Their coordination was even more frightening than when more than 10 venerated martial artists attacked together. This pack of bloodthirsty fiend wolves was the best way for Chu Fengmian to hone his swordsmanship. Chu Fengmian's eyes turned cold, and he suddenly jumped out. In the face of Chu Fengmian's sudden appearance, the dozen or so bloodthirsty demon wolves stopped what they were doing and turned around one by one. The gazes they used to look at Chu Fengmian seemed to be sizing up this uninvited guest. Among them, the largest bloodthirsty fiend wolf was sizing up Chu Fengmian with its eyes. It seemed to be considering Chu Fengmian's strength. Clearly, this bloodthirsty fiend wolf already had some intelligence. Then it roared, and all the bloodthirsty fiend wolves pounced at Chu Fengmian together. The instant the bloodthirsty fiend wolves pounced, their speed was extremely fast. Their claws contained a strong gust of wind. Spiritual power. Demonic beasts like the bloodthirsty fiend wolves also knew how to use their power against their enemies. They were no different from martial artists in battle. In particular, the dozen or so bloodthirsty fiend wolves pounced at Chu Fengmian from all directions almost at the same time. Good timing. Chu Fengmian roared. His feet moved, and his figure became ethereal. Phantom. The dozen or so bloodthirsty fiend wolves pounced at the same time, but what they tore apart was only a phantom. Chu Fengmian's body had already arrived beside one of the bloodthirsty fiend wolves. The black azure sword in his hand suddenly came out and slashed at the wolf's waist. This bloodthirsty fiend wolf had always had a bronze head, iron bones, and tofu waist. Chu Fengmian's sword hit its vital point. Immediately, the bloodthirsty fiend wolf fell to the ground, its body cut in two. Roar! Seeing their companion die, the other bloodthirsty fiend wolves were all enraged. They pounced at Chu Fengmian again. As for Chu Fengmian, he used the phantom movement technique to circle around them. He used the boundless sword dance to kill them again and again. Chu Fengmian's figure shuttled through the dozen or so bloodthirsty fiend wolves, but he was not caught even once. On the contrary, every time Chu Fengmian's sword fell, he would kill a bloodthirsty fiend wolf. Young master, there's a strong smell of blood in front. There should be a battle. Not far away, a group of people was walking towards Chu Fengmian. There were a total of 10 people in this group. 9 of them were middle-aged men. Each of them walked with power. Clearly, they were not weak warriors. There was another person who was extremely young. He looked to be in his early 20s. He was dressed in luxurious clothes, proving his noble status. Oh, battle? Let's go take a look. When a young man heard this, he yawned and opened his mouth. Yes, the 9 middle-aged men were all in high spirits as they carefully approached. Under an ancient tree, they were able to clearly see one of the figures passing through a dozen bloodthirsty demon wolves. In a short while, one of the bloodthirsty fiend wolves was killed. Bloodthirsty fiend wolves? There are actually people hunting such demonic beasts. One of the middle-aged men was a little surprised when he saw this scene. These bloodthirsty fiend wolves had always lived in packs. Every one of them was incomparably bloodthirsty and crazy. When ordinary warriors came to the barbaric mountain range, they would avoid these bloodthirsty fiend wolves. Very few people would actually take the initiative to hunt them. Chapter 22. What exquisite movement and sword skills. This person's strength is actually at the 5th level of the bone-tempering realm, yet he's able to contend against this pack of bloodthirsty demon wolves. His movement and sword skills must be at least at the earth grade. The young man's eyes lit up when he saw Chu Fengmian fighting with the bloodthirsty fiend wolf. Then, greed appeared in his eyes. The young man said to a middle-aged man beside him, "Dugu, go and capture this brat in a moment. Young master, the hall master instructed us not to cause any trouble this time." This, the middle-aged man named Dugu said hesitantly. Stir up trouble? Looking at this kid's appearance, he doesn't seem like someone from a large faction. He's only at the 5th level of the bone-tempering stage at such a young age. He's probably a kid from a remote place who had some fortuitous encounter that allowed him to learn this movement technique. The young man said greedily, "This kind of movement sword technique is extremely rare even in the academy. If I am able to obtain it and give it to Father, it will be a great merit. If such a movement technique and sword technique were to land in such a remote place, it would be a waste." Yes. After listening to the young man's words, Dugu glanced at Chu Fengmian's figure. Indeed, Chu Fengmian didn't look like a person from a big power. He nodded and gradually approached him. On the other side, the dozen bloodthirsty demonic wolves had all been killed by Chu Fengmian. Without exception, all of them had their waists severed by Chu Fengmian. The fur of this bloodthirsty demon wolf is also very valuable. What a pity. Chu Fengmian looked at the bloodthirsty fiend wolf corpses on the ground and sighed inwardly. The bloodthirsty fiend wolves' pelts were also sought after by some disciples of large families. They could be sold for a good price outside. However, Chu Fengmian wasn't in the mood to take these furs. They were too heavy. Chu Fengmian walked over one by one, dug out the demon cores of the bloodthirsty fiend wolves, and put them into a belt. Someone's coming? The moment he dug out the last Yao core, Chu Fengmian's eyes suddenly turned cold. He could already hear the footsteps of someone approaching. This person's footsteps were extremely heavy. 8th level of the bone-tempering stage. In the blink of an eye, Chu Fengmian had determined the strength of the newcomer. In this remote, barbaric mountain range, 8th level bone-tempering realm cultivators were rare. Furthermore, from the looks of it, that person was here for Chu Fengmian. This caused Chu Fumian's body to tense up, and he was ready to attack at any time. In the desolate mountain range, the dangers were not limited to the demonic beasts. The cultivators were similarly dangerous. Killing others to steal their treasures was not uncommon among martial artists. Especially in this desolate and uninhabited place, it happened frequently. Chu Fumian had no choice but to be vigilant. "Kid, my family's young master wants you to come over." Dugu arrived in front of Chu Fumian with a few steps and suddenly opened his mouth to speak. This sentence was more like an order than a discussion with Chu Fumian. It was like a superior giving an order to a subordinate. Upon hearing this, Chu Fumian frowned. Chu Fumian also wanted to ask about Dugu's intentions, but now it seemed that Dugu didn't come with good intentions. Chu Fumian glanced at Dugu and said calmly, "Who is your young master? I don't think I know him. We're from Wu Sheng Academy's Martial Flame Hall. My young master is the Martial Flame Hall's young master." "Come over quickly," Dugu said coldly. When he mentioned Wu Sheng Academy, there was an indescribable pride in his voice. People from Wu Sheng Academy? Upon hearing this name, Chu Fumian's heart skipped a beat. Wu Sheng Academy was one of the largest forces in Wu Sheng country. It was personally established by the royal family of Wu Sheng country, and there were countless halls under it. Any random disciple of Wu Sheng Academy was a genius of a generation. Although Chu Fumian's Lin Mansion was the dominant force in Linwu City, they still had to treat any random disciple of Wu Sheng Academy with respect. He didn't expect to meet someone from Wu Sheng Academy in this remote, desolate mountain range. However, Chu Fumian didn't intend to listen to Dugu's overbearing order. If he was persuaded with kind words, Chu Fumian might consider it. However, Chu Fumian wasn't a servant who could be ordered around by such an overbearing order. "I don't know any young master of Wu Sheng Academy, and I'm also going to meet him. Please return," Chu Fumian said coldly. In his previous life, even if people from the 7 great sects came, Chu Fumian wouldn't give them any face. Now, this little Wu Sheng Academy's young hall master was bossing him around. Chu Fumian wouldn't give him any face. What? Dugu didn't expect his words to be rejected. One had to know that Wu Sheng Academy was a supreme existence in Wu Sheng Nation. Since he had already announced his name, he believed that Chu Fumian would respectfully follow him to meet the young hall master. He didn't expect Chu Fumian to reject him, especially Chu Fumian, who turned around and was about to leave. "Kid, stay," Dugu roared angrily. If Chu Fumian, who was only at the 5th level of the bone-tempering realm, left in front of him, Dugu would lose face in Wu Sheng Academy. He couldn't even do such a small thing. Dugu roared angrily. At the same time, he moved his feet and grabbed Chu Fumian's shoulder. He wanted to force Chu Fumian to stay. Since he refused a toast, only to be forced to drink a forfeit, don't blame me for suffering some physical pain. This claw contained spiritual power. Once it grasped Chu Fumian's shoulder, it was likely that Chu Fumian's shoulder would be crushed. What a joke. If I want to leave, no one can stop me. Chu Fumian snorted. He knew that Dugu didn't come with good intentions. Just now, when Dugu and the others were looking at Chu Fumian from afar, Chu Fumian had noticed. Obviously, they were targeting Chu Fumian's phantom body technique and the ultimate sword dance. If Chu Fumian didn't leave now, he would be like a wolf in a tiger's den. He moved his feet and turned into a shadow. Dugu's claw only caught a shadow. Chu Fumian's real body was already running towards the depths of the barbaric mountain range. "Don't let this kid escape. Catch him." Dugu saw that his attack missed and suddenly came to his senses. He shouted loudly, and the remaining 8 middle-aged men moved at the same time. Countless figures surrounded Chu Fumian. 8 8th-level bone-tempering realm martial artists. Chu Fumian's eyes swept around as he calculated in his heart. If there was only one 8th-level bone-tempering realm martial artist, Chu Fumian could still use the phantom body technique and the ultimate sword dance to fight. However, if 8 of them joined forces, Chu Fumian could only run. Chapter 23. Phantom Shadow. Chu Fumian activated the Phantom Shadow body technique again. Suddenly, 3 shadows appeared at the same time. It was almost impossible to tell which one was the real one. Shadow body technique. Only an earth grade body technique can do this. This kid is cultivating an earth grade body technique. Catch him, and I'll reward you. Seeing Chu Fengyin's shadow body, the young hall master's eyes were filled with greed. An earth grade body technique had never appeared even in Wuxing Academy. If he could get it, he would be ranked at the top of Wuxing Academy. How troublesome. Chu Fengyin sighed in his heart. When the three phantoms split up, the 9 middle-aged men formed a group of 3. Without any hesitation, they chased after all 3 phantoms. With such coordination, there was almost no way to escape from it. Chu Fengyin was now surrounded. It was almost impossible for him to escape. Brat, hand over your movement technique and sword technique, and I can spare your life. This is your last chance. The young hall master sneered at Chu Fengyin. No matter how good your sword technique is, you can't escape today. Hand it over. Chu Fengyin's eyes were cold. This was not a matter that could be settled by handing over the sword technique and body technique. No one wanted others to get their hands on such sword technique and body technique. Moreover, even if Chu Fengyin did not die, he would at least be imprisoned as a slave. Since he could not escape, he could only fight to the death. Kill. Chu Fengyin spat out a word coldly. He pulled out his sword. The black azure sword appeared in Chu Fengyin's hand. Chu Fengyin's spiritual power also expanded and burst out, circulating in his body. Oh, a black grade light sword? The young hall master's eyes showed a trace of ruthlessness. Kill this kid. Kill him and bring his corpse to Father. Father can also extract his soul and refine it. Yes. The 9 middle-aged men echoed at the same time and rushed toward Chu Fengyin. Every move was a killing move. These 9 middle-aged men had most likely killed who knew how many martial artists. Each and every move they made was a killing move that took one's life. Chu Fengyin relied on the phantom body technique to dodge again and again. How vicious! Chu Fengyin looked at the young hall master with killing intent in his eyes. Extracting and refining one's soul was one of the most vicious methods on the continent. After killing someone, they would extract their soul and read their memories. Once a person's soul was extracted and refined, not only would they have to endure great pain, but they would also not be able to reincarnate and would truly die. This kind of method was almost taboo. This young hall master was so young, but his heart was already so vicious. Limitless sword dance. The sword in Chu Fengyin's hand moved. As Chu Fengyin moved, the sword in his hand danced continuously. It looked extremely beautiful in the forest. What kind of swordsmanship is this? Is it a performance? Du Gu sneered when he saw Chu Fengyin's figure. A little fellow at the 5th level of the bone-tempering stage dares to go against our martial flame hall? You're overestimating yourself. This entire phrase was created for you. As Du Gu spoke, he took out a huge heavy sword. With a move of his feet, he rushed in front of Chu Fengyin and slashed down. Die! Only brute force. You don't understand sword intent. Seeing Du Gu attack, Chu Fengyin sneered in his heart. In his opinion, this kind of swordsmanship was extremely clumsy. It's time to let you see a real swordsmanship. Chu Fengyin thought to himself. The dark azure sword in his hand moved. This sword seemed to be extremely slow, but in fact, it almost reached the tip of the heavy sword in an instant. The tip of the sword was the weakest part of the sword. For example, the heavy sword used its strength to oppress the opponent. The tip of the sword was not considered strong to oppress the opponent. Chu Fengyin raised his hand, and the heavy sword was suddenly lifted up by Chu Fengyin. It flew out of Du Gu's hand. What? Du Gu only felt a huge force, and the heavy sword in his hand flew out of his hand. Before he could react, the tip of the sword was already in front of his throat. Die! Without the slightest pause, the sword light flashed, and Du Gu's body fell straight to the ground. A martial artist at the 8th level of the bone-tempering stage died under Chu Fengyin's sword. What kind of swordsmanship is this? Du Gu is actually dead. The remaining 8 people were stunned when they saw this scene, and they all stopped. Du Gu was the strongest in their group, but now he was killed by Chu Fengyin in one move. Chu Fengyin was only at the 5th level of the bone-tempering stage. You bunch of trash. Why did you stop? This is only a 5th level of the bone-tempering stage, Brad. Can't you deal with him? The young hall master shouted from the side. Who killed this brat? I'll give him a dark raid elixir to give him a chance to break through to the body-tempering stage. A dark raid elixir was not a small sum. Even as the young hall master, he felt his heart ache for a while. However, if he could really kill Chu Fengmian and obtain his swordsmanship and movement skill, then everything would be worth it. The young hall master could see that Chu Fengmian had killed Du Gu by relying on his strange movement skill and exquisite swordsmanship. He did not dare to imagine how strong his swordsmanship and movement skill was to be able to kill an opponent who was 3 levels above him. However, it was definitely much more mysterious than the swordsmanship cultivation method in Wusheng Academy. A dark raid elixir, body tempering stage. This sentence immediately caused the middle-aged people who were still hesitating to stop hesitating. Once again, they rushed towards Chu Fengmian. These middle-aged people were in their 30s and were only at the 8th level of the bone-tempering stage. Their aptitude was not high, and it was almost impossible for them to break through to the bone-tempering stage, unless they had the help of elixirs, but a dark raid elixir was so expensive that they would not be able to buy it even if they spent their entire lives. The young hall master's words made them see the hope of breaking through to the body-tempering stage, and each of them fought even harder. Sword after sword slashed towards Chu Fengmian. Every sword was a killing move, and they wanted to kill Chu Fengmian. All of you must die. Chu Fengmian roared inwardly. He originally did not have the intention to kill, but these people wanted to kill Chu Fengmian as soon as they arrived. This destroyed Chu Fengmian's remaining thoughts. Since they wanted to kill, then he would kill to his heart's content. When facing an enemy, there was only killing. He could not let them go. Chu Fengmian's eyes revealed a touch of red light, and he rushed towards one of the middle-aged men. Seeing Chu Fengmian rushing towards him, the middle-aged man was overjoyed, as if he could already see the dark raid elixir beckoning to him. Chapter 24. Fast. The sword was extremely fast. In that instant, Chu Fengmian's speed was twice as fast as before. His body strength seemed to have increased by a lot. His spiritual energy swelled in Chu Fengmian's body as if it was about to explode. Breakthrough. Chu Fengmian had gone through countless battles in the barbaric mountain range and accumulated his strength. Now, under the siege, Chu Fengmian actually broke through. His body, limbs, organs, and almost every part of his body was now filled with a huge amount of spiritual energy. Chu Fengmian felt that his entire body was filled with strength. Breakthrough in battle. This was something that only famous geniuses in history could do. On Chu Fengmian's arm, the 4th spiritual vein flowed with endless spiritual energy. This breakthrough allowed Chu Fengmian to open up the 4th spiritual vein in one go. His realm forcefully broke through to the 8th level of the bone-tempering realm, breaking through 3 levels in one go. If this news were to spread, the entire victorious martial continent would be shaken. For an ordinary martial artist, it would take at least 2 to 3 years to break through a level. Some of the less talented ones might not even be able to break through a level in 10 or 20 years. Even the famous geniuses broke through 1 level at a time. No one was like Chu Fengmian, who could break through 3 levels in one go. This was the magical part of the Broken Bone Rebirth art. Chu Fengmian didn't accumulate spiritual energy for a breakthrough. He had been saving it for breaking through the spiritual vein. The moment the spiritual vein broke through, the accumulated spiritual energy would explode at the same time, causing his realm to rise rapidly. Because of this, Chu Fengmian usually had a hard time breaking through. However, every time he broke through, he would break through the spiritual vein. This time, all of you will die. Chu Fengmian roared. His figure flashed, and he rushed in front of a middle-aged man again. This middle-aged man had already reacted. The heavy sword in his hand was already falling. However, Chu Fengmian's dark green sword collided with the heavy sword and sent it flying. When he was at the 5th level of the bone-tempering realm, Chu Fengmian already had the strength to fight against a martial artist at the 8th level of the bone-tempering realm. Now that Chu Fengmian had broken through, These middle-aged men were already dead to him. Another sword fell, and at the same time, it represented the death of another middle-aged man. In the blink of an eye, the two middle-aged men were killed by Chu Fengmian's sword. At the same time, Chu Fengmian also discovered a cyan pouch on the waist of the middle-aged man. Storage bag. This storage bag could hold 1 cubic meter of items. It was considered a rare item in Martial Forest City. In the Lin Mansion, only the few elders of the Lin Mansion could afford it. These middle-aged men were indeed from the Wusheng Academy. They were all extremely wealthy. Chu Fengmian didn't hold back. After killing the middle-aged man, Chu Fengmian seized the storage pouch and rushed towards the other middle-aged man. In 10 breaths of time, the 8 middle-aged men had all died under Chu Fengmian's sword. At the same time, 9 more storage pouches appeared on Chu Fengmian's waist. You are the last one. Chu Fengmian raised his head and looked at the young hall master. All of this had aroused the young hall master's greed. He had just wanted to kill Chu Fengmian and extract his soul. This time, Chu Fengmian would definitely not let him go. Run! The young hall master could see the killing intent in Chu Fengmian's eyes. He moved his feet and executed his movement technique to escape into the forest. However, the young hall master was only at the 7th level of the bone tempering realm. His movement technique couldn't be compared to Chu Fengmian's phantom movement technique. In the blink of an eye, Chu Fengmian was already in front of him. He grabbed the young hall master's clothes and threw him to the ground. The young hall master spat out a mouthful of blood. I'm from the Wusheng Academy. I'm a disciple of the Wusheng Academy. You can't kill me. The young hall master shouted as he fell to the ground. He looked at Chu Fengmian and shouted, "Those trash are just slaves. So what if they're dead? I'm an inner disciple of the Wusheng Academy. If I die, the Wusheng Academy will take revenge on you." Wusheng Academy. This name was definitely a supreme name in the Wusheng Nation. This was especially true for the inner disciples of the Wusheng Academy. They were the elites of the Wusheng Academy. Anyone who killed an inner disciple of the Wusheng Academy would definitely be hunted down by the Wusheng Academy. The young hall master said hurriedly. He was sure that Chu Fengmian wouldn't dare to kill him after knowing his identity. Oh! Chu Fengmian looked at the young hall master with interest and didn't say anything. He couldn't believe that there was such a foolish person in the world. Chu Fengmian had killed the 9 middle-aged men today. He had already made a huge enemy of the young hall master. Moreover, Chu Fengmian didn't want to reveal the secret of his swordsmanship and movement technique. The people from the Lin Mansion were inexperienced. Even if they saw it, they wouldn't understand its value. Therefore, it didn't matter. However, the young hall master was from the Wusheng Academy. Naturally, he would be able to see through the mystery. Chu Fengmian didn't kill the young hall master today. If he let him go, he would be waiting for the young hall master to find someone to deal with him. Seeing that Chu Fengmian didn't say anything, the young hall master calmed down. He thought that Chu Fengmian didn't dare to make a move after hearing the name of the Wusheng Academy. This made the greed in the young hall master's heart surge again. Kid, let me tell you, I'm not only an inner disciple of the Wusheng Academy. My father is also the hall master of the Wuyan Hall. He has a high status in the Wusheng Academy. The young hall master continued, and there was a hint of threat in his tone. I can let bygones be bygones. I can even let you enter the Wusheng Academy and become a disciple. As long as you hand over your swordsmanship and movement technique, I can guarantee that I will let bygones be bygones. What do you think? With your talent, when I return to the Wusheng Academy, I'll report to the academy and let you join. What do you think? The young hall master thought coldly as he spoke. He thought that there wouldn't be any danger on this trip to the barbaric mountain range. Therefore, he brought along a few slaves. He didn't expect to meet Chu Fengmian. If he returned to the Wusheng Academy, there would be many experts there. Chu Fengmian could do whatever he wanted to him. He could take revenge for the humiliation he suffered today. Before he could finish his thoughts, he saw that there was something wrong with Chu Fengmian's eyes. Chu Fengmian shook his head and looked at the young hall master. I didn't expect the Wusheng Academy to have such a foolish person. Almost at the same time, Chu Fengmian's sword fell and pierced towards the young hall master's chest. Bam! The sword didn't pierce through the young hall master's chest, as Chu Fengmian expected. Chapter 25. There was a jade talisman hanging around the young hall master's neck. The jade talisman was slowly releasing spiritual energy to form a barrier that blocked Chu Fengmian's sword. This is a protective jade talisman. Chu Fengmian frowned when he saw the jade talisman. The protective jade talisman was a special spiritual artifact. It was at least of the mysterious grade. They were created by some high-ranked cultivators infusing spirit jades and spirit energy into them. Normally, they were given to some of the young geniuses of the large clans by the elders to protect them. The barrier formed by the protective jade talisman could last for at least several hours. The barrier in front of Chu Fengmian was impossible to break unless it was a warrior in the body-refining realm. Chu Fengmian didn't expect the young hall master to have a protective jade talisman. "Kid, you can't kill me today." The young hall master looked at the barrier and sneered. "Once the protective jade talisman is activated, my father will know that I'm in danger. When the disciples of the martial flame hall arrive, it will be your death. Don't worry, I won't let you die so quickly. I'll extract your soul and refine it so that you die slowly. I can only leave now." Chu Fengmian glanced at the young hall master and knew that he had no chance this time. The young hall master wasn't wrong. The protective jade talisman contained the spiritual energy of a high-level warrior. Once it was activated, the warrior would know that he was in danger. It was extremely dangerous to stay here. He could only leave now. Chu Fengmian didn't hesitate. He moved and ran toward the depths of the barbaric mountain range. I missed a chance, but the barbaric mountain range is vast. Even if the people of the Martial Victory Academy come, they won't be able to find me in a short time. Chu Fengmian thought to himself. The young hall master didn't know his identity. This way he could buy some time. As long as I have some time, I'll be able to resist the Martial Flame Hall and the Martial Victory Academy. Chu Fengmian thought to himself and ran toward the depths of the barbaric mountain range again. Now that he had made a breakthrough in his cultivation, he could look for some more powerful demonic beasts to hunt. Chu Fengmian's strength had broken through to the 8th level of the bone tempering stage. At the same time, he had opened his 4th spiritual vein. Even if he were to face a body-tempering stage demonic beast, Chu Fengmian was confident that he would be able to fight it. I have to increase my strength as soon as possible, Chu Fengmian thought to himself. With the influence of the Martial Victory Academy, it wouldn't take long for them to uncover Chu Fengmian's identity. Chu Fengmian had to increase his strength as much as possible before his identity was exposed. Along the way, Chu Fengmian had already killed all of the 8th and 9th level bone tempering stage demonic beasts he encountered. One after another, the monster cores fell into Chu Fengmian's bag of holding. Even though these middle-aged men from the Martial Victory Academy are just servants, they are all extremely wealthy. In a cave, Chu Fengmian sat down and took out all the items from the 9 bags of holding. In one breath, he took out nearly 50 jade bottles of various sizes. These jade bottles were filled with all sorts of medicinal pills. Among them, the most abundant was a type of medicinal pill the size of a white longan. These elixirs took up a total of 40 jade bottles, which meant that there were about 400 to 500 elixirs. These must be the energy-gathering elixirs refined by the Martial Victory Academy. Chu Fengmian examined one of the energy-gathering elixirs. The energy-gathering elixir was an upper yellow class elixir. It was extremely rare in the Martial Forest City. Chu Fengmian had seen it once in the Lin Mansion. Only the true geniuses of the Lin Mansion would be given it to cultivate. The spiritual energy of this energy-gathering elixir was 10 times that of the body-honing elixir and 100 times that of the bone-tempering elixir. In terms of value, it was worth thousands of bone-tempering elixirs. Chu Fengmian's monthly salary in the Lin Mansion as the chief steward of the Outer Mansion was worth, at most, 2 energy-gathering elixirs. Now that he had obtained nearly 500 of them, it was definitely a huge fortune. It was equivalent to 20 years of Chu Fengmian's salary in the Lin Mansion. A servant from a Martial Victory Academy has more assets than some of the Inner Mansion's genius disciples. Chu Fengmian couldn't help but shake his head. The difference was too big. These middle-aged men weren't even true disciples of the Martial Victory Academy. They were just servants. Their wealth made Chu Fengmian jealous. Compared to the Martial Victory Academy, even 1,000 or 10,000 lin mansions wouldn't be able to compete with it. This time, Chu Fengmian had made a fortune. With this batch of energy-gathering elixirs, I won't be short of elixirs in the barbaric mountain range. Chu Fengmian's face revealed a smile. These people from the Martial Victory Academy had given Chu Fengmian a big gift. Chu Fengmian had used up all the elixirs he had brought. This time, it was all replenished. Let's go and continue hunting monsters. Chu Fengmian calmed himself down and walked out again. With these energy-gathering elixirs, Chu Fengmian had to spend time recovering his spiritual energy. As long as his spiritual energy was insufficient, he could refine a few of them. It was enough to replenish the spiritual energy in Chu Fengmian's body. The efficiency of cultivation had more than doubled compared to before. Roar! The moment Chu Fengmian stepped out of the cave, a loud roar suddenly came from the other side of the forest. What kind of monster is that roar? Chu Fengmian felt his head swell when he heard the roar. He immediately moved his feet and activated the phantom body technique, carefully passing through the dense forest. Behind the dense forest was a cliff. At the bottom of the cliff, a giant bear stood up. It looked to be 5 or 6 meters tall. The roar just now came from it. A mountain barbarian bear? And a mountain barbarian bear in the body refining realm. Chu Fengmian thought to himself when he saw the giant bear. The mountain barbarian bear was one of the most difficult monsters to deal with in the outskirts of the barbaric mountain range. Its body was huge, and its strength was hundreds of times stronger than a martial artist's. This mountain barbarian bear's strength was enough to enter the body refining realm. Even 4 or 5 body refining realm martial artists might not be able to kill this mountain barbarian bear. Someone actually wants to kill this mountain barbarian bear? Chu Fengmian's eyes flickered. He was a little surprised. This was because he saw 5 figures standing around the mountain barbarian bear. There were 3 men and 2 women. They looked young, at most 20 years old. Their strength was between the 9th level of the bone-tempering realm and the peak of the bone-tempering realm. None of them had entered the body refining realm. Chapter 26. This crag bear is really difficult to deal with. Our martial skills can't even hurt it. One of the men slashed at the crag bear with his sword, but it only left a white mark. His expression changed drastically. This was an all-out attack from him, yet it couldn't even hurt the barbarian rock bear. What should we do? If this goes on, we'll all die here. Another woman said. They were trying their best to avoid the crag bear's attacks, but they would occasionally be scratched by the flying rocks. They were all covered in injuries. You guys go, I'll hold the crag bear back. I'm the one who decided to come out. I'll die, but you guys have to go back alive. The strongest man, who was also the leader, said coldly. These words were spoken with great determination. It seemed like he was already determined to die. Right now, the best solution was to use one person's life to stall the mountain barbarian bear. Only then would the others have a chance to escape alive. Senior brother Mo Chan-in, we agreed to come out this time. If you want to go back, we'll go back together. The woman shouted loudly. We can't leave you behind. Let's go. It'll be too late if we don't. Mo Chan-in shouted angrily. He charged at the crag bear again and slashed at it with his sword, but he was sent flying by the crag bear's paw and fell to the ground. Although these people are young, they're all smart. Chu Fengmian muttered to himself as he hid in the woods and watched the scene. Between cultivators, friendship and kinship were extremely indifferent. Everyone prioritized themselves. If it were any other cultivator in such a situation, they would have fled long ago. However, these 5 young men were still persevering, which made Chu Fengmian have a good impression of them. Looks like I'll have to take action. I've never fought against a body-tempering realm beast. This crag bear is just right. Chu Fengmian snorted in his heart. He suddenly jumped out of the woods and stabbed at the crag bear with his sword. Someone's here? Seeing the figure that suddenly appeared, the 5 young men were delighted. Finally, a helper had arrived. However, when they saw Chu Fengmian's cultivation level, the joy that had just appeared on their faces dimmed. 8th level of the bone-tempering stage. This level of strength was not even comparable to the weakest amongst them. Even if the 5 of them joined forces, they were still no match for this mountain barbarian bear. What was the point of having one more person? Friend, I know you're helping me out of goodwill. However, this barbarian rock bear is a body refinement stage demonic beast. You'd better leave quickly to avoid danger. Mo Chanhen hurriedly said when he saw Chu Fengmian standing beside him. This is our business. It has nothing to do with you. You don't have to get involved in such danger. Mo Chanhen said. With Chu Fengmian's strength, he would be courting death if he got involved. He was only at the 8th level of the bone tempering stage. He couldn't even take a single hit from the rocky barbaric bear. It's all right, Chu Fengmian said with a smile. Without waiting for Mo Chanhen to speak again, Chu Fengmian charged towards the barbarian rock bear. The two ladies didn't dare to look at Chu Fengmian. They could already imagine Chu Fengmian's miserable state when he was sent flying. However, although a miserable shriek rang out, it didn't belong to Chu Fengmian. It belonged to the barbarian rock bear. SSS. The black sword in Chu Fengmian's hand accurately pierced the barbarian rock bear's left eye. The barbarian rock bear roared loudly, completely enraged. Be careful! Mo Chanhen couldn't help but warn when he saw the barbarian rock bear go berserk. However, the next scene left him dumbfounded. The barbarian rock bear's attack was easily dodged by Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian stood beside the barbarian rock bear, continuously stabbing the barbarian rock bear's body with his black sword. However, the barbarian rock bear didn't manage to land a single hit on Chu Fengmian. What kind of movement skill is that? How mysterious. Is this really something an 8th level bone tempering stage martial artist can do? The remaining few people were dumbfounded as they watched Chu Fengmian fight the barbarian rock bear. Every stab and pull out of the barbarian rock bear's body was done cleanly without any hesitation. The barbarian rock bear was enraged to the extreme. It frantically slapped the area around its body, but not once did it manage to land a hit on Chu Fengmian. In less than a minute, Chu Fengmian had already stabbed the barbarian rock bear dozens of times with his sword. I'm almost done for, Chu Fengmian thought to himself. The barbarian rock bear's defense was really terrifying. Chu Fengmian had to use all his strength to stab the barbarian rock bear, but he still couldn't land a fatal blow. After stabbing the barbarian rock bear so many times, it had already lost half of its blood. It didn't have much strength left. It was enough to kill it in one strike. Phantom. Chu Fengmian purposely made a mistake so that the barbarian rock bear would think that Chu Fengmian had fallen in front of it. Oh no! Hurry up and save him! Mo Chanhen hurriedly shouted when he saw this scene. However, before he could make a move, he realized that the barbarian rock bear that had fallen to the ground was just a shadow. Chu Fengmian's real body had already arrived at the barbarian rock bear's neck. 9 sword strikes in 1 strike. Chu Fengmian roared in his heart as he stabbed the barbarian rock bear's neck with his sword. The sword strike seemed ordinary, but contained the power of 9 swords. It chopped off the barbarian rock bear's head in one fell swoop. The 5-meter-tall beast fell to the ground with a loud boom. Silence. There was no longer any sound below the cliff. The 5 people stared at the barbarian rock bear that had fallen to the ground in a daze. It's dead. The barbarian rock bear was killed by a single person. They were all stunned. The barbarian rock bear was not harmed by the 5 of them when they attacked it together. However, it was killed by Chu Fengmian in less than 5 minutes. Is this really something that an 8th level bone tempering martial artist can do? One of the men gulped. He could not believe what he had just seen. In an instant, all of their gazes were focused on Chu Fengmian. They only reacted when Chu Fengmian cut open the barbarian rock bear's head and took out its monster core. Thank you for saving our lives, my friend. Mo Chanhen stood at the side and looked at Chu Fengmian with gratitude. If Chu Fengmian had made a move this time, it would have been impossible for them to escape unscathed. The best outcome would have been for one of them to stay and the rest to escape. Chapter 27. Wu Sheng Academy. Another disciple of Wu Sheng Academy. When Chu Fengmian heard Mo Chanhen's words, he thought to himself that he was fated with Wu Sheng Academy. First, he met the young hall master. Now he met these 5 youths. However, these 5 youths were much better than the young hall master. They did not have an arrogant attitude and valued friendship. This was the reason why Chu Fengmian chose to help them. Martial Forest City, Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian glanced at Mo Chanhen and said calmly, Martial Forest City. Mo Chanhen was a little surprised. This place was not famous. On the contrary, it was extremely obscure. With Chu Fengmian's terrifying strength, he actually came from an obscure place? They originally thought that Chu Fengmian was a genius nurtured by a major faction. They did not expect him to come from a small and remote city. Big Brother Chu, it's all thanks to your help this time. Otherwise, we would have died in the hands of the mountain bear. A man hurriedly expressed his gratitude. This man did not look old. He was only 16 or 17 years old. Now, he was extremely excited after surviving a calamity. How long? You still have the nerve to say that. If you did not persuade senior brother Mo, why would we want to hunt the mountain bear? A girl complained. However, her tone was much more relaxed. I'm Yun Jiaolon. I'm also an inner disciple of Wu Sheng Academy. I'm Wang He. My name is Yu Zhanqing. In the end, the girl who looked the youngest spoke. Thank you, Big Brother Chu, for saving us. No need to thank me. It's just a small matter. Chu Fengmian said calmly. He'd saved these people by chance, and he'd come over when he heard the barbarian rock bears roar. He'd saved these people in passing. It wasn't like he'd come over to covet the benefits. With your strength, it's too dangerous here. Go to the outskirts of the barbaric mountain range. You won't be so lucky if you encounter some body refinement realm monsters. Chu Fengmian looked at them and said. Chu Fengmian could tell that these people should be young disciples of Wu Sheng Academy. They had just come out of train and did not have much experience. Otherwise, they would not have been so reckless to hunt the mountain bear. Yes, the 5 of them blushed. If it weren't for Chu Fengmian, that rocky barbarian bear would have been enough to take their lives. Seeing Chu Fengmian, who was in the 8th level of the bone-tempering realm, speaking to them, the 5 of them felt a little strange. However, realms didn't mean anything. Strength was the only thing that mattered. Chu Fengmian had just killed the barbarian rock bear by himself. This kind of strength was probably stronger than the 5 of them combined. Where did this monster come from? He's able to fight above his cultivation level. Even the monstrous geniuses of the Martial Victory Institute are no match for him. The 5 of them couldn't help but think. The Martial Victory Academy was known as the gathering place for the geniuses of the Martial Victory country. Countless geniuses were in the academy. However, those who could fight across a small realm were considered geniuses. Those who could fight across 2 small realms were considered geniuses among geniuses. However, the Martial Victory Academy had never seen a bone-tempering realm cultivator fight a body-tempering realm cultivator. Furthermore, Chu Fengmian wasn't dealing with a body refinement realm martial artist, but a mountain barbarian bear. Demonic beasts of the same realm were much more difficult to deal with than martial artists of the same realm. Compared to Chu Fengmian, the so-called geniuses they had seen in the academy were like trash. Be careful when you leave. I, Chu, will be leaving as well. Chu Fengmian glanced at the 5 of them and instructed them before he prepared to leave. After killing the mountain barbarian bear, Chu Fengmian was aware of his current strength. At the very least, Chu Fengmian was strong enough to kill a demonic beast that had just stepped into the body refinement realm. In this way, Chu Fengmian could choose to hunt some body refinement realm demonic beasts. The stronger the opponent, the faster Chu Fengmian's strength and swordsmanship would improve. Big Brother Chu, wait. Seeing that Chu Fengmian was about to leave, Hao Lan suddenly called out to him. Big Brother Chu, did you come to the barbaric mountain range to train? That's right. Chu Fengmian turned around and nodded. He came to the barbaric mountain range for 2 reasons. First, to train. Second, to hunt demonic beasts and obtain monster cores to exchange for elixirs. An 8th level bone-tempering realm monster core was enough to exchange for several body refinement elixirs. To Chu Fengmian, now was the time when he needed elixirs. Therefore, he planned to hunt more demonic beasts in the barbaric mountain range to obtain monster cores. Then, Big Brother Chu, do you want to join us? Hao Lan suddenly spoke. Junior Brother Hao, Wang He, who was at the side, frowned. He wanted Hao Lan to stop talking. Senior Brother Wang, now that Big Brother Chu has saved our lives, we naturally have to repay him. Moreover, you can see that the barbaric mountain range is filled with danger. With our strength, it's too difficult to obtain the Emperor Longgrass. Emperor Longgrass. Hearing this name, a strange expression flashed past Chu Fengmian's eyes. The Emperor Longgrass was a top-grade, earth-rank spiritual herb. To a cultivator, it had the effect of consolidating one's essence. Especially for a cultivator below the age of 30, a stalk of Emperor Longgrass was enough to change one's aptitude. It could be said that a stalk of Emperor Longgrass was enough to create a peerless genius. Because of this, the price of the Emperor Longgrass was even higher than some heaven-ranked spiritual herbs. Seeing the strange expression in Chu Fengmian's eyes, Hao Lan continued to speak. That's right, Big Brother Chu. When we passed by a pool earlier, we discovered that there were a few stalks of Emperor Longgrass on the small island in the center of the pool. However, there was a dark-water cold snake that had reached the body refinement realm in the pool. We originally planned to ask the elders of the academy to help us deal with the dark-water cold snake. However, with Big Brother Chu's help, it might be enough to deal with the dark-water cold snake and obtain the Emperor Longgrass. Dark-water cold snake. Amongst the demonic beasts, it was an extremely powerful species. It was said that the dark-water cold snake possessed the bloodline of a flood dragon. When it matured and cultivated, it could become a flood dragon. Normally, an adult dark-water cold snake strength would reach the peak of the body refinement realm. However, from Hao Lan's words, the dark-water cold snake should still be underage. If it had just stepped into the body refinement realm, Chu Fengmian would have the strength to fight. The Emperor Longgrass was especially valuable to Chu Fengmian. If we can really obtain it, Chu Fengmian wants a stalk of Emperor Longgrass. Chu Fengmian looked at Hao Lan and said, "No problem." Hao Lan agreed and turned her head to look at Mo Chang'an. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.